boys. Hey, Synth Gauntlet. All right. Who do you guys want me
Yeah,
to run it?
so yeah, the first person who's coming up here is Repellent, and you can like be the main guy, you can be the main host.
Okay, so Penny and Yugi, they're not.
Yeah, you spend a lot of
Bro, come on.
Yeah, Penny and Yugi are not gonna be a part of this.
Okay, I'm
Wait,
gonna move you
Foxy
guys.
gets two?
Yeah,
No,
Smox
I'm gonna
gets
leave.
to.
I'm
You're
gonna move
so
you guys down
mean.
real quick. Okay. All right. Repellent, you want to debate Synth?
Yeah.
Alright, what topic?
All right. So I had two topics in mind. One we could like just redo the fucking moral realism one, or I heard you're like an objective list theorist. Is that true?
An objective list theorist is what you said, or what did you is I'm correct there?
Yeah. I said
Yeah, I'm an objective list theorist.
word. So I mean, well, if you want, you could like lay it out, and I want to do that. That's more interesting. But like, I haven't looked into like this well-being shit like at all, so I don't know if I might disagree. So if you could just like lay out the full view.
Yeah, I mean, so objective list theory just holds that there is some a list of objectives which are what constitutes well-being. So you could say something like imagine a view that says that pleasure and suffering are the only things that matter. This would usually be described as a hedonic theory of well-being. But imagine somebody says pleasure matters, suffering matters, but also true belief matters. That would be an example of my view. That would be an objective list theorist. They just list out more elements than just pleasure and suffering. Some of them don't list out pleasure and suffering at all. But that's just there's like a general tendency there of listing out multiple things as constituting well-being. It's one theory of well-being that you can hold to. As long as you want to maximize well-being on aggregate, then you still be a utilitarian.
I bet. So, I mean, I read like a little about this, and I also read that you could like construe like the hedonic theory in some kind of list theory way. So, do you hold to? Yeah, do you hold to a type of list theory that is like compatible with the hedonic theory?
I mean, there's some sense in which it's compatible. I'd probably make some higher level instrumental claims that the hedonic people might not agree with on paper.
Wait, Synth, your mic is way too loud.
What the fuck, bro? That shit.
Is it too loud? How loud?
Yeah, your mic
No,
is
it's good now. It's good now, but you started blazing Repellent.
I did not mean to do that. Hold on.
That shit actually startled me, bro. I'm sorry. But
all right. I don't know what the fuck it is. I'm streaming through. I'm moving into the Equalizer API because it was fucking with me. I'm using OBS, so it's. Let me know if it screams you or not. But no, Repellent. Like the TLDR is just that yes, I do think mine's compatible, but I make a bunch of these higher level instrumental claims that I think the most hedonic well-being theorists are going to disagree with.
Okay, do you list the claims out?
Like, here's one example, right? I think that true belief is something which I think that true belief and pleasure is the same fundamental type of thing, and that I think it's resonance along a network of closely interconnected feedback loops. So I think that when you take a neuron array in a lab, for example, and you stimulate that neuron array with like repetitive patterns so that it's able to create a model, that neuron array ends up incentivizing the behavior of the neuron array. So if you want to reward a neuron array, you give it a consistent patterns that it's able to build models out of. And if you want to disincentivize a neuron array, what you do is you give it random noise, which is harder to build a model off of. So what incentivizes a neuron array when it's a very small neuron array, like the kind you'd grow in a lab, not like a full brain, the thing that incentivizes it, or seems to correlate with pleasure there, is its ability to build a world model based on its input.
Okay, so
but if this is not an area where just to hopefully avoid boring the fuck out of everyone, if this is not an area where we really have any disagreements, or at least ones that you're aware of, then it might be good to go for the debate that you think we do disagree on. Like, I know you're a theist, right?
No, I'm not a theist.
Then we disagree on that.
Okay, you are a theist?
Yeah, I'm a theist. On whatever you're not, I'm theist.
Alright, bro. I mean, shit. Okay, if you do want to do like something that I could like, I'm confident we disagree on, we could probably just do like the meta ethics topic.
Sure.
I'm not theorist. Okay, I mean, I'm familiar with your motivations. It's like the whole multi-layered shit. Like you have like the intuitive, the realist intuitions, and then you have I think you like falsify all the other anti-realist things, and that's how you reach realism. I'm pretty sure.
That's one of the methods that I use for arguing in favor of realism. I think there's an empirical case for it, just based on certain trends and how morals develop over time.
Okay, I mean, go with whatever route.
You want me to go with whatever route? You don't have like an argument against moral realism? I can like throw out the ones you've heard a million times before, but we've like debated this topic plenty. I figure you'd have like a new counter argument because I don't think you. I don't think you'd be satisfied with your previous debate performances.
Yeah. Okay. So I think the previous debate we went over like the realist intuition stuff. This time I might just like grant it. I want to see like where the arguments go after that, right? So like you could just like lay out the arguments that either don't have anything to do with that or just are further on that line. Like once you grant, like let's say I just grant the fucking we have moral intuitions that are realist sided. So yeah, that is somewhat some credence building in favor of realism, but it's not like completely good evidence, right? So what is the thing?
Well, it would be you would take intuitions to be good evidence. You just would say that they're the evidence that could be defeated by some larger piece of evidence, and you agree there's evidence in favor of moral realism. You agree, I'm guessing, that we shouldn't have. There's not reason to have low priors on moral realism, or do you think we should have low priors on moral realism?
I think the only objection I would have is like maybe some parsimony concerns. Like obviously it commits you to some like stance independent truth makers that like any answer.
Yeah, I don't think that's a hit to parsimony. So my model of parsimony is just that the number of independent bits you would need to represent a system or a world state, that's the parsimony of that system or that world state. So I don't think that it's an increase in the number of bits that are necessary there, because the kind of thing that I'm referencing, when I talk about the good and the bad things, is a thing which you in your model will recognize does exist, which is just when you feel pleasure and when you feel suffering, you admit that you acknowledge there's something different about those two experiences. The thing that I'm referring to when I use moral talk is the thing that's different about those experiences. Pleasure has the good fact about it, suffering is the bad fact about it. And all other respects are the same. They're both feelings, they both happen to you, they both happen to most people, yada yada. In all other respects, those two things are the same, except for the fact that pleasure is good and suffering bad. So pleasure feels good, suffering feels bad. That's the one thing which is different about that. You recognize that difference exists, and you recognize there's some cause of that difference that exists there. So you can say, like, you think that it's when you say good and bad, you're talking about the analysis after the fact of the thing, right? But you're still agreeing there's some difference to be analyzed, and that difference is what I'm talking about when I use terms like good and bad.
Okay, so I mean, if by the difference, well, okay, there's multiple things I'm curious about. Firstly, by independent fact, when you were talking about parsimony, what do you mean? Like by the independence there?
I just mean that one thing does not causally relate to the other one. So one thing is not just supervening onto the other fact. So if you have, yeah, go ahead.
If you just like, yeah, so if you just like have some entity that is like something the view commits to, but it's just something that is entailed from like some other entity, then like the extra entity, it isn't really like something that would count against.
To be a hit to parsimony, yeah, of course, yeah.
Okay, so yeah, your mic spiked.
Oh, let me see if I can just turn off my compressor.
Yeah. Also, like, I'm pretty sure like my background is weird. Let me know whenever it is. I'll just get up. But yeah, so okay. Other than that,
do I not even have my compressor? How about that? Is it better now, or is it still fucked up?
Yeah, I mean it's better. Like spiking. That's fine.
I got you. Let me just turn the fucking shit down a little bit. How about that?
Okay. Yeah, it's fine.
All right.
Okay. So, shit. Yeah. So you said like the thing that you would invoke is just like the fact that there's some distinction between pleasure and fucking suffering, and like that's the truth maker. Like that's the stance independent.
That's the thing in the world I'm referencing when I use moral talk. So I'm not committed to any more things in the world than you are. So I'm saying I'm not taking a hit to parsimony because we both have, even if you want to go with ontological parsimony, we both make the same number of ontological commitments.
So okay, I mean, let's just go into the ontic account then. Wait, so if that is what you're invoking, then okay, like what is the stance independent truth maker? Like how do you relate the fucking pleasure and displeasure stuff to something out there that decides like the goodness and badness of the actions?
I don't think there's something that decides the goodness or badness, right? I don't think that morals are subjective, so I wouldn't think that that's like it's a decision that to be made whether or not something's good or bad.
Well, okay, yeah, my fault. Like something that like turns on or like causes some moral propositions about the goodness of something or like the badness of something.
I mean, I would just say that for X to be moral, that just means that X is it creates the best possible outcome.
Best possible outcome.
Yeah, and by best there, I'm just referencing well-being.
Okay, yeah, and right. So you would just say that like for X to be moral, X has to produce like what's the name? The most amount of well-being.
Yeah, I think that what you ought to do is to maximize well-being. Yeah, but I think that if you say like that person has other decisions that they logically could have made, that doesn't necessarily mean that that person would have had access to that information, so they couldn't have practically made it. So when I say best there, I'm referring to like the practical modal scope.
Okay, so like
the modal scope of practical reason, yeah.
Sure. So practically the most amount of well-being that can be achieved from an action.
Yeah, so just like if somebody were to ask, like, could you have known all the facts? It would be the sense in which you'd say, no, you couldn't have known all the facts. So you're limited, so you have to go based on expected value. Because that is what's utility maximizing in this sense, would be to go based on expected value. That's the best you can do.
Yeah, I mean, well, okay, so probably just disagree with like the whole pleasure shit being what guides thoughts and stuff. So what's the argument for that?
What's the argument for my definition?
Yeah, probably. Yeah, sure.
I mean, I don't take definitions to be the kind of things that require arguments, but I can give you some motivations for it.
Yeah, like I'm not asking you for like, yeah, bro, prove your definition true or whatever.
Well, yeah, like obviously you can't give an argument that like it concludes with the definition. That wouldn't make much sense. You could say something which is like an identity statement at the conclusion. But you want my motivations for it. The reason I'm motivated to use this definition is because of the fact that I think that it's good to maximize well-being, right? So that's my motivation for it. That's not the same thing as the definition itself, though.
Mm-hmm.
So definitions I don't take to be the kind of thing that requires argument.
Mm-hmm. Wait, so you think? Well, okay, wait. To be clear, yeah, clarify. Like, I'm not asking for an argument for the definition in the sense that, like, yeah, it concludes with the definition itself. I agree with you. But yeah, the motivation. Okay, yeah, that seems kind of weird. So, say it's good to maximize well-being. By good, there, do you mean just like the same thing? Because that seems kind of circular. Like, I don't know.
No, it's not circular because I'm giving you a motivation, right? I made it very clear that I'm not giving you an argument for a definition because I don't take them to be the kind of things that require argument. So that's why it's not circular. I
just take a motivation to be like any kind of like reason in favor of some proposition. So
that's very strange. So there are a lot of things that are like motivations, but they're not rational, right? So they wouldn't be well reasoned. They wouldn't be reasoned at all.
I mean,
like somebody could spontaneously have the motivation. Somebody could spontaneously have the motivation to like beat kids to death. You wouldn't say they've got a reason to beat kids to death.
I mean,
maybe you would.
Clear. Wait, when I say bet, but when we say rational, like I'm perfectly fine with adopting the view that like you could have your credences raised in on like a proposition with like epistemically bad reasons, right? Like. I don't know. I could believe in God because I think believing in God gets me some money, right? So obviously I could have like irrational motivations for God, but the motivation still like they're still motivating me for the belief because, you know, they raise my credence in the belief or whatever, right? And as for like the spontaneous shit, I mean, I would usually think like it is in response to something. Usually we would say it's irrational, it's completely arbitrary, probably because like it's in response to some like super menial thing or something that like to us just seems like super epistemically bad or something. Like it wouldn't raise our credences by anything, but it does raise their credence, like the credence of the person that was motivated.
Yeah, I mean, I understand the way that you're using these terms. I would agree with you. I just use the terms differently than you. But to maybe lock in on the moral talk there. When I use the term moral, I've given you my definition. Could you give me yours?
My definition of moral would probably be like, I think subjectivist account. Probably, yeah. probably be some subjectivist account. Like it would just be an expression of one's preferences, I guess.
So when somebody says that's immoral, you think all they're saying is I don't want that.
Mm-hmm.
So if somebody said, "Man, I really want to do that, but it would be immoral," you would think that they're just like contradicting themselves.
I really want to do that. I think this goes back into the dispute that like we had in the first convo.
Well, it may go back to that dispute, but just to clarify, what's the answer?
Yeah. The answer is no. I don't think they're contradicting themselves. It's just like they have like this lower order preference against. Wait, you said I really want to do that, right? Yeah. So they have a lower order preference for doing.
No, they're saying on net, I want to do that, but it would be immoral to do. I'm going to do it anyways. Like a person like that could say a sentence like that, and they wouldn't be contradicting themselves.
On net,
yeah, like on net, somebody could want to do something while still recognizing that it's immoral to do.
Okay, so it's like if like some person out there does that, then I think like on net, then I think either of two things. A, it's just is like very unrealistic, or B, they just go by like some different.
No, it's not unrealistic. People do that all the time. People do things and feel guilty for them. Mm-hmm. Right, so that's the person who wanted to do that. They even wanted to do it on net to such a degree that they made the decision. Yeah, and yet, while they're doing it, they feel actively guilty. It's just the guilt doesn't overweigh all the other reasons they want to do.
Wait, I'm gonna have you repeat what you just said, but let me just say one thing. Okay, wait. For the guilty thing, that's probably like them doing it, or like when they made the claim, they probably just had this preference for doing the action, and then post doing it once they realize whatever consequences.
No, say they're doing it. Say they have the guilt while they're doing it. People do this all the time. You've never done something and like thought to yourself, "Man, this is wrong to do, but I'm gonna do it." You've never felt that?
I mean, wait, hold on. Let me just a second. Wait.
You've never done something you know is wrong?
Okay, wait. Usually when I like think something is wrong, but I still want to do it, what I mean by wrong there is probably like it's gonna cause some sort of like, I don't know, societal problems, or like it's gonna be considered wrong by other people. But it's still like my preference for it still like.
By wrong there is you mean other people disprefer it?
Yeah, like I probably.
So you
like,
couldn't imagine wanting to do.
Okay. Okay, go ahead.
You couldn't imagine wanting to do something that you think is wrong and other people agree that it's okay? Like you couldn't think of something that you think is wrong but most people would disagree with that you might want to do? You think that's like a contradiction in terms?
So something that I think is wrong but other people think is right?
Yeah, like something you think is wrong that you want to do anyways that other people think is okay. Like say for example you have some like some random obscure view. Everyone's got one, right? The little pet view. Maybe you have like maybe you think it's the case that I don't know, like spending your money on things other than charity is wrong or something. Most people are fine with that, but you might have like some different view. You've never had an experience like that where you take up that view and then you violate your own moral principle? You've never experienced that?
What happens? Okay, wait.
Well, I want to know if you've experienced that.
Yeah, so wait, I was gonna go over my experience, right? Like usually what happens is like with my thing, I trust my intuitions at the moment, right? So usually when I make decisions, I just go off of like.
But this isn't really answering my question. I'm not asking you what you usually do. I'm asking, have you ever done this?
Have I ever, bro? I wouldn't be able to like recall off the top of my head, bro. But like,
okay, that's fine. Look. I think that most people would be able to recall the answer as being a yes. But if you're saying you can't recall it, that means that you at least admit that in principle it's something that could happen.
Yeah, no, wait. That's what I was about to say. Like, okay, dude, I never said that like this isn't something that could happen. I'm just saying it's like unrealistic given my like.
Well, that's fine because your definition can't just. Yeah, that's not sufficient for your definition. Your definition would have to mean that it's always impossible because it would just be a direct contradiction with what you said morals are.
No, wait. My whole thing was if it's unrealistic, then I mean, if it happens in that, if it happens, then it's probably just going to be like some 1 in a million thing. If it's some 1 in a million thing, then I could just grant them going under some different semantic, right? So, like...
No, you wouldn't be able to grant them going under a different semantic because you invoked your semantic while understanding that scenario.
Oh, wait, so, like, the thing that I'm conceiving as possible is, like, they go under my semantics and, like, still do, like... have that,
yeah, your sense of what the word morals means, right? You said that you could imagine a scenario where you want to do something, right? You've even, like, adjusted your definition a second time. right, and inserted that into the definition. Your new definition was supposed to be about what society generally believes. And then I adjusted the hypothetical to say, okay, imagine it's some obscure moral view that most people don't agree with. Well, now would you say this is still like impossible? And you said, no, it's definitely still possible. So if it's still possible, then both accounts you've given for moral talk is wrong.
All right. So yeah, firstly, when I said it's possible, I was misunderstanding what like you meant. I thought what you meant was not that like I'm not that I'm conceiving of some scenario where I go under my semantics and like have the whole conflict. It was just like, oh,
no, it was because I was about you thinking it to yourself, so it had to be it had to be your semantics.
Wait, no, wait, hold on. When I said that, like, oh yeah, I could conceive of it, it's possible. I was talking about just like some person, some agent. I wasn't specifically talking about.
No, you were specifically talking about you. We made that very clear.
Yeah, wait, hold on. When I said like, yeah, I can't recall off the top of my head, like that's usually where I just leave it at. And then when I said, yeah, it's conceivable that can happen, what I was talking about was just
the scenario I said is what you were talking about. This just feels like you're just being dishonest to weasel your way out of an obvious issue with your view.
Wait, hold on. This doesn't matter. We should just like fucking go with the substance.
It obviously matters because I mean there's a contradiction in your view.
Yeah, no, wait, hold on. Okay, obviously the contradiction point matters, but like this whole like meta shit doesn't matter. That's what I was saying. Yeah, so back to the contradiction stuff, right? So yeah, what I was saying was, I mean, okay, it's my view, then hold on, let me just think. So they on net grant that some action is like bad, and they still do it even if they like can agree that like, let's say they consider the action bad, society considers the action good, and they on net consider the action bad, they still want to do it. Like, is that the thing?
Yeah, the idea is basically. So the idea is just is it possible that you, right? Is it possible that you could have a scenario where you have some obscure moral view, right? Mm-hmm. That you think is the case, and you recognize an action is morally wrong to do, but you want to do it anyway.
Okay, so I mean, if like my kind of morality here, objective, yeah, I would probably go against it being possible because, like, hold on, if on net I decide that it's like immoral, then what that probably means is like on net overall I don't want to do it. So it just seems kind of like contradictory for me to want to do it. I know that's the contradiction you're invoking, but like from that I'll just say it's impossible. Like I can't conceive of that happening. I'm sorry.
You can't conceive of it happening?
Yeah, because like if the whole thing is like I want to do something, I acknowledge that overall I don't want to do it, but I still want to do it to the point that like
no, you don't acknowledge that you don't want to do it. You acknowledge that it's immoral.
Well, yeah, no, but under my semantics, what's immoral is what I like on net don't want to do, right? Or on net, like.
Well, that's what you're proposing, but this is supposed to be an intuition pump against it, right? So this is the idea here is supposed to be you take a look at the snenario and you hear how the words are used and you see, does your definition really feel like it's capturing that? Because with the definition you've espoused, right, the one you said you ascribe to, all of the things that you said prior would be like wildly in contradiction with each other. This current thing you said wouldn't be, right? This current thing you said is the thing that would make sense with your definition, but it doesn't really make sense on face value. Like the rest of us, most people can acknowledge. Well, hold on. Most people can acknowledge that under normal moral talk, right? Just the way people are generally using the term, there's no contradiction in saying, yeah, I really want to do that, but it's immoral. There's no contradiction in saying, yeah, I did that thing, but I knew it was wrong. Like people just use terms like that. People use moral terms like this all the time. Yeah, these are like really common turns of phrase.
Wait, hold on. Yeah, okay, wait. To be clear, yeah, I don't disagree that like in common language that's like super common. Like people grant this being possible. Yeah, I don't disagree. But what's his name? Like, okay, so when I said that like it's impossible, what I thought you meant was like, okay, yeah, some dude says that like even though they know this thing is bad, they still want to do it. And when what they mean by bad is literally like the subjectivist account that I was giving, because I thought it was like some internal critique. But if it's just supposed to be like some intuition pump against my view, then I mean, it probably is just like they're not going under, well, whatever account of bad they go under, it's probably not some preference-based account, or like it's probably
yeah, that's the point.
Hey guys, I don't mean to interrupt, but I do want to give other people a chance to also come up.
Bro, what?
So
that's 100% fair.
If we could wrap it up a little bit.
Okay,
I'll summarize. Well, really quickly, I want to summarize my side here, and then I'll let you get the last word. I'll cook it over, and then we can move on to somebody
Can we
somebody
like
else wants to talk
slightly
about.
argue for? Well, can we argue for slightly more, bro? Okay, I'll just like steelman this, right? I'll just say that.
Well,
Okay,
look,
yeah.
just to wrap it up, can I go ahead and summarize, and then I can kick it over to you?
All right.
All right. Thanks. Don't mean to be rude. I just we do
No,
have to
it's
move.
fine. No, it's fine.
So here's the quick summary of the issue I see, right? If you're just using moral talk to describe something that everybody else isn't talking about, then you're really not even engaging in moral talk. You're just using the word or the mouth sound moral, right, while describing some totally different idea or concept. That's fine. It's just that's not really a meta-ethical discussion. That's just you invoking a term in a private way. And if you want to do that, I'm not going to like object super hard. I would say that it's kind of like less useful and likely to lead to confusion among other people, likely to lead to them believing you think things other than you do. All of these things are virtues that I think a definition probably shouldn't have. Right? They're kind of like issues for a definition. And I think that generally when people are invoking moral terms, because they seem to use it in some way that's supposed to be motivating, I think they're trying to reference the thing which is fundamentally motivating the minds, which is pleasure, suffering, true belief, that kind of thing.
Okay. Wait, you done?
Yeah, kick it over to you. Get the last word.
Sure. So I'll just say like, slightly. I'll go over like the thing that we were going over and like close. I guess I didn't know we had limited time. But shit. So, yeah. Okay. So when it comes to like the whole them using different semantics, well, yeah, I could just steal man and say that like even under the same semantics, yeah, they might have like conflicting feelings at some point, but I don't think that's a critique to like the view, because a lot of the times people judgments, even if you like take the maker to be some objective thing, they're going to be flawed or whatever, right? So I mean, like some flaws, or not even some flaws, some confusion, I think that's like a property that's bad, or that's like a flaw in humans. That's not a flaw like about the view. I think the view characterizes like I don't know, human moral talk better. I think, yeah, she said like, yeah, it leads to more confusion. I mean, I think it doesn't, because like if you just have, if usually you just take human intuitions about certain actions or the morality of certain actions to be like intersubjective, usually they're going to share the intuition.
That's a question.
I mean, wait, why?
No, don't worry. You can keep going on. I interrupted you. My bad.
Yeah, I mean, okay, yeah, the intersubjectivity, that's probably like a super easy empirical case for that, but like, yeah, I mean, there's not really else I wanted to say. I just wanted to go over the thing we were going over, but I guess, but yeah, that's it.
We should definitely do some additional debate some other time. I know the gauntlet format is kind of bad for these deeper discussions.
Bro, I thought I would get like an hour, but damn.
Honestly, I think the full thing is supposed to last about an hour. I could
It
probably like
can-
tack on an extra 30 minutes or something.
Yeah, if you want it to go on longer, it can. But I think someone named Poochie wanted to debate you on abortion.
Okay. Drag him up.
Alright, thanks for calling.
Good talk.
Is Poochie in there?
So apparently Nyquat's supposed to be next, but he's not here.
Nyquat not to anymore. Something about wanting proper behaviors. I don't know. He did his.
He doesn't want people to point out the fact that he said on recording that he thinks that people his age in his ideal society would be able to fuck 15-year-olds. Actual quote.
Yeah, the guy's a weirdo.
Yo, guys, hey, give it up for Poochie, guys. Hey,
Poochie. What's up, Poochie?
give it up for Poochie.
All right, good luck,
What's up,
Gucci.
guys? Hey, what's up, guys? Hey, what's up, Sinthe?
What's up?
Hey, nothing much. Just woke up from a nap, but I expected I took the opportunity to have a conversation with you on abortion. I hope you're pro-choice. I think, correct?
That's right.
Okay. I don't know how this is gonna work. Would I need to like present my position? Would you want to present your position, or?
Yeah, I'm done to do either one. So my position, in short, is that I think it's the case that I think that if it's not a person, then I think it's fine to kill it. I think personhood is a social fiction, but that social fiction is one that we define based on moment of first experience, and that moment of first experience instantiates personhood. Your personhood is gone at your moment of last experience. So that's my reason for why I think it's fine in the case of like a zygote to kill the zygotes. I would ask you, why is it wrong to kill a zygote?
Well, Okay, that's fine. So my position just hinges on the fact that it doesn't necessarily talk about personhood claims. It simply just says that like, we're going to have this human organism, presumably the fertilized that got conception. This human organism is going to be the later organism that is going to experience a future of goods, and this future of goods is going to contain things that us human beings, we intuitively value. For example, hopes, dreams, desires, relationships, friendships, all of these things. And for example, abortion, in majority of cases, is prima facie immoral to deprive this organism of this future of goods.
Yeah, so I mean, I take issue with the idea that there's an organism being deprived if the organism doesn't yet exist.
Wait, well, can you repeat that?
I take issue with the idea that you're depriving an organism of goods if it doesn't yet exist. Doesn't really make much sense on face value. So here's an example, right? So say, for example, I was to say, I don't want to have sex with my mom. And then you said, well, you're depriving your potential child of a future life. Isn't that kind of fucked up? I would say, I'm not depriving anyone of anything. There's no future child. I'm not going to have sex with my mom. Would you say that I ought to have sex with my mom, or would you agree? You shouldn't fuck your mom.
Wait, what the fuck? Wait, no,
would you
I don't think...
would you say you should not fuck your mom? Agree?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I wouldn't fuck my mom in this
even though
instance,
you're depriving your potential future child of life.
The thing is, I think when you say that there's no organism existing, or like a later organism existing, it's going to be different in the case of like remaining in abstinence than like actually having this act that has already happened. There's a clear difference between a sperm that hasn't met an egg.
Well, that's question begging. I don't think that's true. So you want to make the argument there is, then go ahead.
The argument for
the diff
for the
difference.
The difference between a sperm and a fertilized organism, or
no, the difference between deprivation in those two cases. How are you by abstinence not depriving future lives?
I'm not really understanding this question.
Yeah, so you're saying that an act of abstinence is not depriving a future life, right? I'm asking you, why not?
Because it's going to be the case that there's not an existing organism that you're depriving of.
Yeah, so what makes it the same organism over time exactly?
It's going to be its biological structure, going to be its functionality as an organism.
The biological structure changes over time. Its functionality as an organism changes over time.
Its DNA structure doesn't really change over time.
Well, that's not true either. But like, let's go with that. Let's say that it's the DNA that makes you who you are, right? If it was the case that halfway through, or sorry, let's say that it's like right at the moment when it would gain sentience, the DNA was going to mutate, right? Would you think in that case it's a different person now?
If it is going to be the case that when it gains sentience, like the DNA structure, like changes entirely.
Yeah.
Yeah, sure. I guess it'd be a different person.
Okay, so if you right now your DNA were to randomly mutate because of like the rays of the sun or something, for example, would you think it's the case that you're a different person now?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, you're a different person if you get cancer?
I'm a different person if I get cancer, and that's the thing that like mutates my DNA.
Getting cancer is a mutation of the DNA.
Yeah, sure.
So people who get cancer are different people than people who don't get cancer. Like before you had cancer, or you wouldn't say any person who's had cancer, right? They've never not had cancer. Agree?
Any person who's had cancer, they've never not had cancer?
Yeah, because that would be a different person who didn't have the cancer.
I mean, yeah, sure. I would make the distinction that a person that has had cancer.
So just to make sure that we're on the same page here, so you know what you just agreed with. Anybody who has cancer has never not had cancer.
Yeah, sure. They're going to be the person previously is obviously going to be a different person than the one that's actually had cancer. Yeah,
I wouldn't go with obvious there. I think that the obvious view is that like there are some people who have cancer and they used to not have cancer. That would be the obvious view. But you disagree with what I think most people call their obvious view. But that's fine. Look, if you take a non-standard view there, we'll go with that, right? Understanding that your view is this, that's just not the kind of thing that I'm talking about or anybody else is talking about when we say that people are valuable. So I don't know, why would I care about this?
Wait, I don't know why you would care about my view regarding like biological numerical identity.
Yeah. Why would I care about not about your view in particular, like you having the view or whatever? Why would I care about providing those things with lives or not depriving them? Why would I care about those types of things?
Because I generally, if you're trying to see like why exactly you should feel motivated by my view, I feel like that's going to be a rather difficult question to try to sway you on. But personally, I just don't feel that sentience is the kind of thing that gives the human some sort of like inherent moral worth. I don't. Obviously, you would disagree, correct? Since that's your
So
position.
I think the moment of first experience is what gives you personhood, and that's the kind of thing that we care about when we start building laws out for society. So these are instrumental values. They're not like terminal values or anything along those lines. They're not like root level values. Really, what I care about at a root level is just pleasure minus suffering and true belief. But I don't think it's the case that on the utilitarian view, abortion is bad, because I think that you could obviously offset pretty trivially by just like having another child later on down the line. And most people who have abortions are people with children already.
Okay. What is it about these things that you said like at a first experience is what defines you as a person, correct?
Yeah.
Okay. What is it about these first experiences that make you like valuable in the sense that we ought not kill you?
So the thing about these first experiences that make you valuable in the sense we ought not kill you is the fact that it instantiates the social fiction of personhood. And when we build laws and constructs for society on a larger scale, what we have to do is build them on a person basis, because people are the atoms of society.
Okay, so presumably what you're just saying is that the reason why like these first experiences are what makes a person morally valuable is because this is what the law is built around, correct?
Is that, well, I'm not talking about some like terminal moral value, to be clear. I'm talking about instrumental moral value. But yes, the thing that I care about here is how we can build laws, and societies build laws on the basis of people as the atoms of society.
Wait, so why is it the case that you have to build like laws around people and not like human organisms?
Because if we build laws around human organisms, you don't get a utility maximizing society. And I care about utility maximization.
Wait, what? Utility maximization? What's that?
Maximizing well-being.
Maximizing well-being.
Yeah, to make well-being
yeah.
as much as possible, like to bring about as much well-being as possible in a society. That's what I care about.
Okay, and then well-being is going to be indexed too.
The thing described earlier, so just pleasure minus suffering, and true beliefs.
Okay, and only sentient people can have these like things that you're indexing well-being to.
Well, that's not necessary for my claim, but yes, obviously only sentient people can have types of experiences and beliefs.
Okay, that's fine. Do you believe that like there's going to be a period in time where you like stop being a person?
Yeah, of course, when I die.
Okay, when you die, there wouldn't be a case. It wouldn't be the case that, like, for example, if I go into a temporary coma and I wake up, that I'm a new person.
I don't really know what you mean there by a new person.
A new person would, well, at least under your position, right? I'm just like what I'm understanding is that this is like in a sense this is going to be like something indexed to like psychological continuity, while being indexed to
No. It's
it's
not indexed to psychological continuity. No.
No, it's not. Isn't it not about something like regarding psychology? This
I don't think it's about some fact that it reduces to. Like I've said several times, I think it's a social fiction.
Okay, it's a social fiction. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, interesting. So then, okay, so you think the only case where you stop being a person is like death. There's like no other instance where you like, become a new person.
That's correct.
Oh, okay. And then, well, okay, this is what I'm understanding. When I bring up this thing about like a new person, what I'm understanding is simply that, like, for example, when I'm hearing this thing about well-being and then pleasure and all these things, I feel that it is very probable that if, for example, if I get into like this car crash and like I lose my previous experiences because of some like weird scenario and I wake up, I believe, like, at least under your view, you should be committed to say there's a new person there.
Why would I be committed? Can you draw like the premises I've committed to that concludes with that?
Okay, hold on.
Hey guys, real quick, while we're doing that, maybe like 10 or 15 more minutes, and Sinthe, I think Apollo wants to debate you next.
Okay.
Oh, fucking Christ. Okay, hold on.
Sinthe, you said you were fine for staying like maybe an extra 20, 30 minutes?
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Hold on, I'm trying to make an inference rule and make sure this argument is actually well structured.
Hey. I mean, how the hell are you guys?
That goon.
It's the goons.
What's good, goon?
What's going on?
Yeah, it's
I mean, you did bitch repellent. To be clear, I just want to make that abundantly clear. You did bitch him.
Goons, were you interested in debating Synth at all?
I mean, I don't really have time right now. Wait, Sinthe, did you see my? I sent a message in chat and I tagged you in it. I don't know if you saw it.
Well, let me just roll up and check it. Let me see.
Just asking if you reject
Can't find
like an orthodox truth maker theory for like in the moral domain.
It depends
Like
on. I
the
mean, you said
principle.
an orthodox truth makers theory. Like, what constitutes an orthodox truth makers theory?
Well, it's just accepting this principle. I'll just read out the principle. Well, I mean, I can just just for every like true moral proposition, is there a truth maker for it? Like in the restrict sense.
I think there's kind of some weirdness about what qualifies as a truth maker, but yeah, I would say yeah.
Okay, and then okay, so in an empty world, are you saying like it's not wrong to like rape and kill babies for fun?
Well, no, even in an empty world, it still would be wrong. I think the truth maker doesn't have to be an ontologically committed fact in the world, though.
Well, what's the truth maker in the empty world?
The truth maker in the empty world would be the facts about pleasure and suffering. So I think it's a truth maker in some broader sense of truth maker than you might be using. So I don't think the truth makers need to be ontologically committed. I think that you can have analytic truth makers, which is a non-standard view. I'd agree.
Yeah, I was gonna say, yeah. Is there anything in the literature with that view, or?
Oh, I'm sure there is. I wouldn't know what to reference. There's probably something out there.
Analytic truth. Okay, so is it true in the same sense that like 1 + 1 = 2?
Yeah,
in the empty world? Okay.
Yeah.
And it's not. Is it a natural fact that makes it true?
Well, I think we get into weirdness once again. With what constitutes a natural versus a non-natural fact. But I mean, like, I think there's a view in which you can call it a natural fact, and there's a view on which you wouldn't call it one. I'd probably say that I like have issues with the bifurcation there, direct. But I don't know if like I was trying to just get the vibe across. I'd probably say non-natural.
Okay, so it's a non-natural analytic truth in an empty world. Okay. And is it the same type of truth? Is it the same type of truth as in like this world?
So when you say it's the same type of truth as in like this world,
are the truths in this world analytic and non-natural that make moral propositions true?
Oh yeah.
Okay. Oh, okay. I thought you were a synthetic naturalist.
I swing back and forth just based on like where I think the distinctions lie of what counts as naturalist versus non-natural, and what counts as synthetic versus analytic. It really is just a semantic dispute. My view is somewhere near the center.
Well, like the objection to a non-naturalist view, well, at least one. I mean, it might not be seen as very powerful, but like the moral argument against non-natural realism. Are you acquainted with that? Like, if it turned out that there was some like non-natural, stance-independent reason to rape babies, and it's kind of like it's kind of the same objection you'd like provide to some divine command theorists or whatever.
I feel like this is the issue is though this could you could reform this objection for every single view. So it's really probably the least important type of objection. I think like if it was the case that it was moral to rape babies, would it be moral to rape babies? Well, yeah. If there was if that's to be something that everybody should agree with, if there's stance-independent reasons counted in favor of it, would it be good to do? Well, yeah, you would just reject the stance-independent reasons count in favor of anything if you don't believe they exist.
Right. Well, people might want to say that they're more confident in it being false. That it's like right to rape babies than they are in the conditional, right? So they might reject the conditional, and that might seem convincing. But I mean, obviously, if you're already committed to moral realism, then it might not have much sway.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's the same kind of argument you can give for like any random like meta or even just any random semantic thesis for moral talk, right? You can just insert their semantic thesis into the same kind of implication. You can just have like the antecedent can be like, if raping babies was X, where like X is your semantic thesis, then would it be good to rape babies? And the answer will always be, well, yeah, but like it's not. Of course, it would be good if it was good, but it's not good. So who cares?
No, I know. Yeah, obviously see what I'm saying. I see what you're saying there. But like you're saying under your current view, like it would be wrong, and that's usually the defectiveness in it or whatever, or
Yeah.
that in the literature they call it a defectiveness in the view. Like because okay, so a subjectivist might say that like at some time T2, my preferences might change, but like right now I'm saying that would be like wrong, right? And so under my current view, I don't take the view that that's right. But the difference there is that you're saying under your current view that it's moral to rape babies if it turned out that there was just some non-natural fact in favor of it. And that might be unintuitive to some people, or
Well,
obviously
that's like saying.
already.
Yeah, but look, I could give the same argument in like a different form to any other theory. I could just say like, if it was the case that under your current view, it was good, it would be good to rape babies. Would it be good under your current view to rape babies? And you was like, yeah, it would be.
Yeah, trivially, yeah. No, obviously, yeah. I see the parody there.
Real
Yeah.
quick,
Are you? Somebody said you're
Pucci-
supposed to debate Apollo.
well, he's
Think
Yeah,
debating.
I mean, I already sent the like. I mean, I have like
let's
very
see.
little time left, but I sent the argument. If
Oh yeah,
you wanna
honestly,
have
I
a discussion.
reject P1. I'm saying that it's fiction, not.
So your mic,
calm the fuck
your mic,
down, calm
your
the
mic. Yo, stop
my
trying to
God.
blaze, bro. Stop trying to get loud.
Come
You need
on,
to
man.
fix that.
I'm on phone.
Wait, is Kate coming up here or what?
Testing, test. Is it bad?
You're good. You're good now.
No, you're good.
All right. Yeah. So
real
I
quick,
reject.
after.
I
sorry to
reject
interrupt, but-
P1. Oh no, you go.
Yeah, real quick. After the response, let's just get like one more, two more back and forth from you guys. My mic keeps cutting out, and then we can get Apollo versus Synth. That's cool with
Please,
you guys.
please, I want to record
Yeah,
that.
yeah,
Okay,
yeah. I
bye,
guess
bye, bye.
back and forth. I got blown the fuck out, and it's not just because my points are bad. It's because my points are bad, and I'm retarded. Every single time that Synth made a good point, I ran the fuck away from it. And yeah, I think I embarrassed myself sufficiently. So yeah, I guess that's how I'll end it.
That shit was rhetorical.
Jesus. All right, I'm gonna drop down. See you guys.
See you guys. Peace.
All right, so Pucci, this is your time.
Yeah, oh wait, what did you say? Like, which premise did you regret? I mean,
Yeah,
reject.
When is I reject P1, P3 here. If a person loses all of their experiences and their identity is no longer defined by their, I reject P3 as well. P4, if a person's identity is no longer defined by their past experiences, then they are a new person. I'd also reject P4. Conclusion, therefore, if a person loses all their experiences, they become a new person. Let's chase here. I think that is valid. P4 would be if a person is no longer defined by their past experiences, they're no longer defined by those past experiences. If a person loses oh yeah, no, this isn't valid. The conclusion you want to get to is if a person what does it say here? If a person loses, then their identity is no longer defined by. Yeah, I don't think this is. Also, what P1 seems unrelated to. P1 and P2 both seem unrelated to the conclusion here. Like, it seems like if you just had P3 and P4, you still like get to your conclusion here. So I think it is valid, but I think the P1 and P2 are superfluous.
Oh, okay. Did I actually mess up the fucking argument?
Well, yeah, conclusion here is if a person loses all their experiences, they become a new person. And P3 is if a person loses all experiences, then their identity is no longer defined by those experiences. And P4 is if a person's identity is no longer defined by their experiences, then they are a new person. So P3 and P4 would be sufficient for the conclusion. But I reject P3. And I also reject P4. So I like neither of those are premises that I'm committed to. I get why you got the impression I was committed to P1. I tried to make it clear a few times that it was a social fiction. It's not actually defined by the experiences. It's like a thing we made up. Personhood's not real at all. But when we build laws, we build it all in fictions because laws are fictions too.
Yeah, I'm just gonna be the real man here. I really can't show any more rebuttal, so I concede.
Yeah, it was fun talking. I know you just woke up. We'll do it when you're like more awake sometime. Drag Apollo up. Bring him up.
Yo,
Wow.
Sam, can you hear me?
Yeah, what's
All right, so I'm not here to debate, but I do have a couple of questions for you. Driving at the moment, is that cool?
Sure.
Yeah, so there's a couple of issues that I take with the subjectivist thesis about morality. The first one is the sort of semantic thesis, and the second one is about the ontological thesis. Right now, so if somebody is a subjectivist and they take a control of moral propositions where those things express hypothetical reasons, right? Either in most or all cases, right? Just imagine if you have a case like this. Imagine if you have some case where there's an amoralist um, who has knowledge about all the relevant moral norms. So it's not like they're epistemically, you could say, deprived of all the relevant facts concerning those moral norms. But it's just the case that this specific agent just doesn't have any sort of motivations to converge with the moral norms, right? And let's just also say that this specific agent, wanted to rape a woman, right? Now, do you think that it's the case that on a control of moral propositions which only express hypothetical reasons that that specific agent can't even really be held morally accountable in any relevant sense, given that
Well, I
all
mean,
the reasons are in accord with, rather in accord with any sort of, categorical reasons not to rape the woman, right?
so I think that there's two big issues that I see with the hypothetical. Like on face value, I think it's incoherent. I don't think there's like a coherent definition of what defines an agent. We can start with that. Maybe we can start with that.
But you don't think, say it again, you don't think there's a coherent definition of what an agent is?
Yeah.
Well, I guess for the purpose of this hypothetical, you can just conceive of an agent as somebody who has.
No, I mean, like the somebody talk is still going to be an issue. Like I'm a PID eliminativist. I don't think that there are somebodies.
I
think they're fiction.
Okay, yeah, you're an eliminativist about personal identity and stuff like that.
I hold like fictionalism about the person to talk.
Okay, so that's fine to say that there's somebody in this case is like a fictional somebody, right? So just imagine like a fictional entity that has an ability to discern from right and wrong. Like, right, they have the sort of epistemic tools by which they can discern from right and wrong courses of action. That's generally what I think most people mean by agent, right? Or at least a moral agent.
Not clear people mean that, but we'll go with that. So the person is the pseudo person, fictional person. This entity which is making these determinations, right? They're making some determination of right and wrong, and trace out how are they making the determination they're doing wrong to anyone?
Not necessarily that they are current. Well, when you say making, that sort of implies that they're presently making, deliberative decisions or something. But I'm saying, when I say agent, I'm just talking about one that has the, a sort of, I guess you could say, capacity to be able to discern from right and wrong courses of behavior. Right now, it's not necessarily the case that they must presently be deliberating about right and wrong courses of action, right? It could just be the case that they have that sort of ability to do so, right?
Yeah, I mean, in this definition, right, then the idea of what an entity is here seems like it could be compatible with some view that like all the things that exist are one unified entity. That's the case. If all the things that exist are one unified entity, then they issue the hypotheticals just as a contradiction in it, which is that the unified entity is not motivated and the unified entity is motivated. And so
unified entity. What I don't know. I don't understand what you mean by that.
Yeah, so the thing which is doing all of the thing which is doing all or capable of or has the capacity to do all the recognition stuff. I don't think that I'm not going to even believe in Hexaity regarding particular things. So I'm just assuming there to maybe get to move the argument forward that you're fine with that being that idea of an entity just being compatible with the idea that all the things that exist are one unified entity.
You said you don't believe in Hexaity?
Yeah. Like this one, I think it's another fiction. But I don't want to get us too fogged up in the mud of that. Things? About what?
Are you a fictionalist about most things?
Oh yeah, for sure.
Okay, I didn't know that. I didn't know that before I stepped into the conversation. But yeah, maybe that's sort of another conversation that we can have. But the point is that, do you think that in that hypothetical case scenario, on whatever control of, I guess you could say, agent or whatever it is, do you think that it is the case that that specific amoralist agent, you could call it, does not in fact have any reasons not to rape the woman?
I think that the woman there is another issue, but I think that there are reasons. I'm not sure what the idea of having a reason is, as opposed to just there being reasons, other than the idea that you've got access to the reasons. So if they have knowledge, right, of the fact that it hurts people when you rape them, right, that it's suffering promoted, right, that it causes this bad state of affairs there, then it seems like they do have the reason. But if you're saying no, they're actually not aware of that, well, then I wouldn't say the person's blameworthy. So just depending on that distinction there, either is the case that I'd say one thing right, which is relatively trivial and not super disagreeable. Whereas this other thing, which is also relatively trivial and not super disagreeable.
Okay, so you would say that it's not the case that they specifically, like the sort of reason there is not indexed to their specific, I guess you could say, stance about it, but rather it just is a fact that there is a reason for them not to rape the woman, despite the fact that all of the relevant stances that they have access to are not converging with those norms.
Well,
right?
no, what I'm saying is if they don't have access to the fact that this causes suffering, right, like they don't understand what it would be like to be raped, like they just can't grasp it in their mind, and they just think this person's an object, I don't think that person's blameworthy for doing that action. I think they're just like deeply mentally ill. I wouldn't say that they're a bad person for it. I would just say they're a broken person.
But would you say that? Yeah, but the point is that there's still a reason, right? That counts in favor of.
Yeah, there's a reason they don't have it, right?
There's not a reason if they don't have it. You said.
No, there is a reason. They just don't have it.
Well, yeah, okay,
what I would mean by
Well,
have it there is like know it, right? They wouldn't know that fact.
Right. They don't. There's not like a sort of epistemic accessibility relation. Okay, that's fine. Okay, and then the second question is: are you familiar with, like Sellers and McDowell when they talk about conceptualist stuff? Right. You're familiar with that?
Yeah, like any relation to myth of the given. Is that where we're going? Yeah.
Yeah. So what? Okay. So how do you feel about those sort of PLA arguments against subjectivism? What's your general thoughts about that?
I mean, I have different thoughts to the different arguments that I've heard brought up. Which one are you thinking?
Just the general one where the sort of if the subjectivist is taking some view where all of their moral semantics are just such that terms like oughts and should and good and all those things are just reducible down to their preferences, that those sorts of things are not going to be epistemically accessible in such a way where they can enter into rationalizations and provide epistemic justification for our moral beliefs, at least in any relevant sense, right? That's the sort of style of argument that I'm alluding to.
No, I think they certainly could. So I think that the way you'd have epistemic access to it would just be like normal. The same way I hold the same epistemic view that I hold for every other domain, which is just in order to have a justified true belief in something, it has to be a true belief, and also it has to be one that you've gained through the correct true belief gaining strategies, right? In virtue of those true belief gaining strategies. So
when you say you can have access to it, are you saying that other people outside of the agent, or just the agent themselves have access?
Other people outside of the agent.
And by that, you're just saying that them sort of, I guess you could say, conveying their preferences is what's giving other people access to those relevant information.
Yeah, that's one way it does it. The other ways are like other inductions that you can make and other deductions you can make. So like if I see somebody crying, even if they're not actively attempting to communicate their preferences or convey them, I would still say that they're like implicitly conveying them. Or even if I saw nothing about the person, I could just think, well, I know that every other person I've ever met doesn't eat shit. They would think it's bad to eat shit. So this person probably prefers not to eat shit too.
Yeah, but
without ever meeting the person.
That's consistent with. Okay, so I think that's consistent with what McDowell wants to say. Like you can sort of structure.
I do too. I think that maybe the argument you were providing there is like related to McDowell's, but not identical to.
Well, yeah. I wasn't sort of presenting McDowell's exact argument there, but okay. So it seems like I can agree with you that you can sort of structure preferences in such a way where you can make proper inferences from them, but you agree that preferences themselves sort of lack that conceptual structure, right? Like they themselves are non-conceptual in character, right?
It's not clear to me that they're non-conceptual in character. But I feel like there's like a lot of different definitions of what makes something conceptual.
Well, just take McDowell's definition. Do you think it's conceptual on that definition?
What's his definition?
Just that which is entirely like a type of mental content which is constituted by concepts entirely.
Well, I mean, what the thing that is confused here, I think, is the definition of what a concept. Like, what's your account of concept, or what's McDowell's account of concept?
What's the definition of concepts?
Yeah.
I don't know if I have like any sort of sufficient conditions for that.
All right. Well, I mean, just going off of my assumptions about what it might mean, I would say that there are conceptions.
Okay, how do you construe preferences as conceptual items?
Yeah, so I would say that they're concepts in the sense that they're state of affairs occurring in a mind.
State of affairs occurring in a mind.
Yeah, which to me seems to be a concept.
So you don't actually think that there are such things as non-conceptual content. You don't think those sorts of things exist. You think any state of affairs that occurs in the mind is in fact conceptual.
I wouldn't hold it there a non-conceptual mental state.
It's kind of a radical view, no? Like most
Probably, but I
philosophers
don't think
agree
there's.
that there are non-conceptual mental content.
No, I mean I wouldn't hold that. Yeah, I'm not even sure if it's most philosophers. I'd probably wager it is. I'd probably assume it's something like like 70% or so. But I don't know. Maybe if you've got the Phil paper study, it might be different. But I don't know.
Yeah.
I'd probably say that I'm like fine with it being a minority view among philosophers, regardless of the number.
Yeah, it's a large majority. Fleur said it in the comments. Conceptual states are mental that require concepts, not constituted entirely by concepts. Okay, cool. But McDowell holds an externalist account. I assume that you're internalist about concepts then. Sinthe?
Sorry, say again. I got caught up reading Fleur's message in the pop-out chat. My bad. She's saying it's 50-50 in the literature is what she's saying. Yeah, okay, that makes sense.
Okay. Yeah,
so I guess
that's all the questions that I had left. But I'm gonna drop back down and listen. Are you about to debate Apollo right now?
Hope so.
What are you guys gonna debate?
I don't know.
Okay. Well, good luck. I'm gonna drop back down and listen.
Peace.
Yeah. So
right,
there might
thanks.
be a little delay there because Apollo says he has to go pray like about like 10 minutes or so. He has to go do
He's on
that.
his 10th prayer of the day.
Yeah, but
Jesus.
in the meantime, but we could just like get somebody new to like to serve as like a little intermediate section.
Does anyone want to come up and give a halftime show? Saucy, do you want to come up and ask some questions or something?
Saucy. Bring
Yeah,
Saucy.
we could get Yotam or Saucy, or them both actually.
What's good, Saucy? What do you want to debate about?
Oh, what's up? I just want to know if Tim thinks that NTT is successful.
It depends what you mean by successful there.
Yeah, so like you don't think there's
Is it effective? Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, so like you think there's or you don't think there's a trade?
Well, I don't think there is a trade. But maybe you got one.
Yeah. So I think the trade would be something like highest ordered use. And all I mean by that is if it's the case that, the way chickens are going to be most useful to promote the flourishing of persons, if the way they're going to be most useful is to be like chicken parm, then it's morally permissible to kill them for food.
Yeah, so that obviously wouldn't justify most instances of animal suffering because most instances are not they're not the most useful. They're not utility maximized.
Oh, but I think it justifies pretty much all instances of factory farming.
Yeah, you think that, and I just told you why it doesn't.
Yeah. Well, presumably, right? If charities that are donating to kids in Africa, and not even presumably they are purchasing meat from factory farms, and this is saving millions of kids from like being malnourished and dying, then
That's not
it seems that factory farming does increase the flourishing of human beings, right? Like you would agree with that.
Well, I would disagree with that actually. No, I don't think that's what the nonprofits I'm familiar with that are actually effective are doing. They're not like buying meat from factory farms because that's like wildly expensive. It would be a really bad strategy. The thing they ought to be doing if they're providing food to kids in Africa is they ought to be giving them like a vegan or at least vegetarian diet if they want to make it as effective as possible. And the most effective charities, the ones that you should be donating to, not the ones that are like wastes of time doing stupid side projects like fucking food, are the ones that are doing things like malaria nets. Like those are the good. If you care about African children, you should go for the malaria net one. And if you had a nonprofit that was in Africa and you wanted it to be effective and it was food delivery, right? If you had to be food delivery for some reason, you certainly wouldn't want it to be a non-vegan diet because it's like wildly expensive. Plus the shipping costs. Jesus.
You think that meat from factory farms, and I'm not talking about like the kind of meat you would buy from the store. I'm talking about the meat that you would purchase in bulk directly from the farms, right? You think that's more expensive than shipping vegan food?
If you're shipping that, yeah, of course it is.
Yeah,
but I don't think the alternative is to
literally
ship.
literally every single. I mean, there aren't really sources, but like if you were just to look into this for like 5 minutes, you would see that it's
oh, there are no sources, but you've looked into it for 5 minutes. You know a lot about nonprofits now.
Oh, yeah, I do know a lot about nonprofits. Yeah.
Okay, could you tell me what the difference between a 501c3 and a 501c4 is?
No, I have absolutely no idea.
Okay, you know no idea. You have no idea how nonprofits work. Don't ever say.
I know it. No. I know what nonprofits.
There's no source, but you totally think there's no source.
Nonprofits work, right? I said I know what these nonprofits do.
Okay, what's the nonprofit that you're thinking of?
Yeah. And to be clear, it's not just nonprofits; it's also charities. But we could just look at we could look at something like a Compassion International or Save the Children. Like these are two good examples of charities that donate to kids in Africa, and they would purchase the food, and they also do other things. They like build houses and shit. But the food they purchase to give to these kids comes from factory farms.
Yeah, so you think it's the cheapest possible option? They've chosen to use factory farms instead of using like beans, for example. Why is it cheaper?
Not instead of just using beans. If you want to meet like some full nutrient profile, because these kids are malnourished, right?
Yeah, so you need beans and rice for a full macro profile. And if you care about vitamins,
No, I
the
didn't
cheapest
say.
way to
I
do that
didn't
is
say
from a vitamin
full. I
supplement.
didn't say full macro. No, macros.
You
are
said
different from
nutrient.
nutrients.
Well, no,
Yeah.
macros are not
Nutrient
different from nutrients. Macros are a type of
Well,
nutrient.
not different. Not different. They're a type, but they don't meet your full nutrient profile. Like you agree, you can hit
Yeah,
your macros.
I gave you
and not get all
micros
your
too.
nutrients.
Yeah, that's why I gave you macros and micros.
Oh, you just said macros. It's a little blunder.
No, I didn't. I said the way you can get your macros
you
is
wanna
from
bet on
beans and
that?
rice alone. Yeah, we'll bet on it. So the way you can get macros, don't you owe me money from a previous bet or something? So
I've never
look,
talked to you before.
pretty sure we have. Pretty sure you might be the same guy. But look, we
I
can.
grant you think that. You're a little bit confused.
Yeah, I think you're definitely the same guy, and you owe me money. So look,
You're
here's
definitely the same guy.
here's the thing that I said, and I'll remind you, and you can just like listen back to the recording, you'll hear it. I said if you want to get all your macros, you can get it from beans and rice, and for your micros, you can get it from vitamin supplements. That's what I said. Go listen back.
Ooh, you didn't say that. You didn't say anything about
I
vitamins.
did. Listen
Do
back.
you think that vitamin supplements, along with purchasing beans and rice, would be less expensive than purchasing factory farm meat?
Yes, obviously. What the fuck? Yes, of course.
That's the most confused thing ever. Mineral supplements are significantly more expensive.
No, they're not.
They definitely are.
No, that's genuinely insane. Can you provide a source?
I mean, you're the one that made the claim. I would expect you to provide a source.
You just said my claim is insane and deeply confused. Do you have a source? Just yes or no?
Oh yeah, I said your claim is insane, right? I didn't.
Do
say
you
your
have a
claim is
source,
false,
yes or
so
no?
Just go ahead and provide the source.
Answer my question.
Are we getting a source or are we getting a dodge?
Well, I think we're getting a dodge is what it looks like. So yes or no to my
No,
question?
I do think we're getting a dodge. I think Synth is dodging the question for a source. Like I do think that is what's happening.
This is a terrible Goons impersonation. You're not him. So just answer my question.
The terrible Goons impersonation.
I'll give you a
That's
source
really
if you just
good.
answer
That
my
was
question
great.
and say you don't
That
have
was
one.
very rhetorical. I'm glad you said that. That was very, very nice.
What are you doing? Are you just like crashing and burning on purpose?
Yes, I'm crashing and burning. Do you have a source so I can crash and burn while reading the source?
Now you're asking me the question that I asked you. That's crazy. So
Are you under
look,
the
answer my
impression
question
I crashed
eventually, and then I'll get. Look, if you just say no, I'll give you my source. Deal?
Oh yeah, no, I don't have one. Give me yours.
Okay, yeah, I got you. So look, the source is Walmart.com. You stupid fuck. Go open up Walmart.com and look at the price.
Oh my gosh, there's
You're so
absolutely no way
fucking
this
retarded.
moron. There's absolutely no way.
So
this
let's do it
moron
together.
said
Let's do it
Walmart.
together, and we'll do the
You are
comparison.
so incredibly stupid.
We'll do the
Did you hear
comparison
what I
right now.
said?
What's
Did
your
you hear when I said?
what
did you hear when I
is,
said
in
about
your
3 minutes
opinion,
ago
the
that I wasn't
most
talking about
effective and
resale prices?
cost-efficient
I was
way
talking
that
about
you
bulk directly
can
from
provide?
factory
That would be
farms?
Yeah,
Are
that would
you
be
confused?
You could get. Well, hold on. You
Wait,
understand
do
the
you think that
distinction is not
Walmart
between
isn't a
bulk and
retail store?
resell.
Do you think that
You can
yeah,
have
do you think Walmart
They
isn't a
sell
retail
bulk.
store?
They sell in bulk.
I'm aware they sell bulk. Do you think they purchase it
Okay,
from before?
so
or do
you were
think they sell-
talking.
You think they create the
you-
bulk they sell?
They do in fact purchase it from farms and create some of it themselves. They do both.
Wait, so you think Walmart has their own farms where they produce meat?
Yes.
Do you have any source that would suggest that Walmart? And I'm not talking about farms.
Yes, they
I'm
label
talking
it.
about no.
They're,
I'm not talking about. I'm not talking about.
Look,
farms that they
you are
own.
not well
I'm not
versed on this
talking about
topic at all.
farms
This
that
is
they
so
own.
sad. But
Talking
look,
about
what I'm trying to, I want to move
that
the
they've
conversation
made,
forward.
that
I
they
understand
produce
you want to
meat,
loop for a
and
little
they
bit.
take care of all
What
the
I
costs.
need from you is for you to really clearly give me what you think is the most cost-efficient method of getting your micronutrients. What do you think is the most cost-efficient method? Give me specific meats for the specific nutrient,
Oh yeah, the
and
most
I'll give you a cheaper vegan method.
Yeah, the most cost-efficient way to get these starving, poor, frail, dying African children the nutrients that they need would be to ship them kiwis and would be to ship them like a fatty meat, like chicken thighs or something, along with rice.
Okay,
and
chicken
eggs.
thigh. Yeah. So you think it's gonna? You think rice, eggs, and chicken thighs are gonna get you your micros?
Well, just chicken thighs and kiwis would meet all of your micronutrients. Yeah.
And kiwis?
Yeah, chicken thighs and kiwis would meet your entire.
What are you talking about? Kiwis the bird?
No, kiwis the fruit, like the green.
Yeah, that's
fruit.
vegan, stupid. You're retarded.
Oh, that's vegan, stupid. Yeah, you ship them
Okay,
both,
so
retard.
so just to be clear, what you think is you think the cheapest method is going to involve kiwis and chicken thighs and rice. So the only non-vegan thing there is the chicken thighs.
You don't even need to add the rice. The rice is just going to be there to sort of keep
You
them full.
you do
But
need
just for the
you do need to
micronutrient
add the
profile.
rice. You need it for the
Or
carbs.
you don't know. Wait, you think fruits aren't carbs, moron?
No, you're so
Fruits are
retarded.
carbs,
This
you
is so
retard.
embarrassing. Oh
You
no.
might be the dumbest
So
person
look,
I know. You think a fruit isn't a carb? Are
you want
retarded?
healthy carbs. You don't want to give people a bunch of
want
sugar
healthy
that's
carbs.
been
Do you
bound
think that
with
fruits aren't
fibers.
healthy
It's the
carbs,
only
you
way
retard?
for
Wait, do you
you
think sugar and fruit is
to.
bad for you?
Why are you trying to pack me up? Like,
You're
what is
such a
it? What
fucking
is wrong with
retard.
you?
Oh my god! Like,
Do you know
I
how to
would've
have a
thought that the
conversation like a
quote-unquote
normal
SVG
person?
debater would at least know about
You're
the
doing
nutrients in
terrible.
foods. Like,
I
you're such
understand
a
you think you're
moron.
doing really well,
Look,
but you're
I'm
just
just gonna
not
need you
engaging
to
with
go
any
research.
arguments and
I'm gonna need you
screeching
to
over me the
research
entire time.
what fruits
So
are
look,
and how
I'm
they
gonna go
contain
through it with
carbs,
you,
and
and
how they
I'll
also
explain to
contain
you why
sugars
the
that aren't
chicken
bad for you,
answer
and
was
how
a very
kiwis
bad
and chicken
answer.
breast or
The
cod
chicken
chicken breast
answer was
doesn't
not a
tie
very good
real
answer.
meat your entire
So
micronutrient
more
profile, and
effective
will do it better than
than
any other option.
chicken and cheaper than chicken, whether it's bulk, if you want to compare bulk to bulk, we can do that, or we can do it resale to resale, or we
Just
can
answer
do
my
it
question,
individual
moron.
item to individual item, and you can see that if you want to go with the cheapest option, you wouldn't go with
Still, like,
chicken, you would go
posturing and
with
babbling on
tempeh
about
and
nonsense.
seitan. Do you have a
Timothy
counter
and
argument?
seitan.
You don't know anything about this topic. This is so sad.
I don't know what seitan is. It's a sort of meat substitute that tastes like ass. But look, just tell me what nutrients are
Really?
in
Have you
seitan.
ever had it?
No, I haven't. I'm not a retard.
Okay, so it doesn't taste like ass. You don't know what it tastes like.
No. Look, I
So
don't need to taste.
answer.
Wait.
So
You think you can't
answer.
know something tastes like
Answer
ass
the
without
argument
eating
that has been provided to you. The
Yeah,
argument I
if you
provided
need
to you is
to
there's a
eat
cheaper
what tastes like
alternative,
ass,
and it's going to hit all of
the.
the. It's going to hit your dietary needs better than chicken will.
Yeah. So, what nutrients are in seitan, and then list out all the nutrients in your nutrient profile, and tell me which nutrients you're getting from it.
No, the problem you're having right now is you're not supposed to be asking
Okay,
me to list out
are
the
we
nutrients.
getting an
You
answer
made a
to the
claim that it was the case that it was
or
cheaper.
are
I
we
gave you my
getting-
argument for it, and now I'm asking you,
No,
what is it that
no,
the Seitan's not
no,
meeting?
no,
All you have
no.
instead
What
is
is
to
it not
ask me the
meeting?
question
Okay, great.
back because you don't really have arguments. You don't know anything about
Right.
this.
I'll just Google what nutrients are in seitan. Hold on.
You should do that. You should do
Wait,
your basic
so-
due diligence before having a debate.
Yeah, so
I
Apollo
agree.
just
You
got
should
back
take
from
your own
praying.
advice.
Do you guys want to like cut this short? Do you want to like get conclusions?
No, I want to debate this guy.
Okay, sure.
All right. So it has selenium, iron, phosphorus, and calcium. That's it. Did you say something else other than that?
What do you think? What else do you think there is that needs to be in there?
Wait, you're aware that your micronutrient profile includes vitamins, retard, right? Like K1, your B vitamins, your C
Yeah,
vitamins.
you gave
vitamin D,
examples
vitamin E.
of of rice and of kiwis as examples of things that are also going to be in the diet. Those are both vegan and they contain I don't know why you're not engaging with the argument. You just want to screech. If your goal in this debate was just to screech the entire time, then we can both pack each other up. Your microphone's dog shit. It's going to be really easy to do that. There's nobody's going to be able to hear you if all you want to do is talk over me while I'm speaking because my voice comes through louder than yours does. What you should do instead of trying to talk over the entire time is try your best to engage with the fucking argument.
Let's see.
Yeah, let's see you engage with the argument.
There we go. Seitan doesn't include all the B vitamins, retard. So it's not meeting the nutrient
Wow,
profile.
it doesn't
Look,
include
if you
all
wanna
the B
step
vitamins?
up-
You said it
look,
includes no
yeah,
vitamin.
It doesn't. Sorry, it doesn't meet your micronutrient profile, retard. Look, and if you want to sit
Do
there,
you think this is helping your argument? You're spurring it like a motherfucker.
Look, if you want to spurg because your mic is louder and you want to act like a little girl that we all know you are,
You
that's
wanted to
perfectly
do
fine.
that.
If you want to bitch
You
and moan and have
said
your little
that
man period,
Seitan doesn't include vitamins. Is that something you still believe after doing a little bit of research on it?
we can do that. So just let me know when you find a food that meets
Does
the
Seitan
micronutrient
contain
profile.
vitamins, yes or no?
It does, yeah.
Were you wrong when you said it doesn't contain vitamins?
Ooh, that's not what I said. I said it doesn't contain all the vitamins necessary to meet the
No,
profile.
you didn't.
retard.
You
Little bit
said
of a
that
tracking error on
how
your
is
part.
Seitan going to meet your
Tracking error.
meet your
So I'm gonna need
nutrient
you to
needs?
stop talking,
You
and I'm gonna
need
stop talking.
vitamins for your
I'm gonna need you to
microbes.
answer
That's what
the
you
question
said.
I asked. I'm gonna need you to stop being a moron and answer the question.
You're
that you
doing
asked.
terrible.
Can
Do you think
do
this
that
shit's
for me?
rhetorical? This is what you do. You're doing the full anime debater thing where you just
Look, I'm
spaz
gonna
out with
need
as many
you-
words as
oh my God.
possible
Why do
because
all
you
the
think for
low tier-
some fucking reason it's gonna help dig you out of the fucking argument. You've clearly said that the reason why it doesn't meet your nutritional goals is because the macros you need include vitamins, and it does in fact include
You might be
vitamins.
the first biological man to ever PMS. Look, just answer the question and stop bitching.
What question do you think you asked?
You're so fucking bird tracking. Oh my God. Give me a food that meets
No, nobody's
all of
not.
the vitamins in your
I don't need to
micronutrient
give you a
profile.
food. You didn't do that. You didn't do that. You gave a combination of food.
Yeah, combination works too, moron.
Yeah, and the combination of foods you had included vegan foods.
Low tier? Are you this fucking stupid?
I've already given you the combination of foods.
You didn't give me the combination because kiwis also contain
Did
no B
I?
vitamins.
Yes or no? Did I give you the combination of? Like, yes or no? Did I give you the combination of? Yes or don't spaz. Don't spaz. Don't spaz. It's not your turn to spaz right now, right? It's my turn to spaz. You don't spaz.
So listen closely to what I'm saying. Yes or no? Did I list out beans, rice, and vitamin supplements as 3 things which in combination will meet your macro and micro needs? Yes or no?
You did do that. The vitamins are still
Okay, so when you said I didn't give you a list of food or a combination of food, that was wrong, correct?
didn't that was less expensive, moron. Start tracking.
Yes or no? Did I give you a list of food or combinations of food?
No, you did that. That just didn't answer my question.
So when somebody were to say in this debate, just hypothetically, since you totally didn't say it, you say hypothetically, if somebody in this debate were to say that I hadn't done that, they'd be a fucking retard. Yes.
Oh yeah, if they were to say you hadn't done that, right?
Yeah, they'd be a fucking retard.
I agree.
Yeah, and you're retarded then. Thank you.
Oh, and you're retarded then. Look, this moron is still not tracking.
That's the saddest shit I've ever heard.
What I said to you was one which is less expensive.
It is less expensive. Why do you think it's more expensive?
It's not less expensive. You've yet to demonstrate.
Why do you think it's more expensive?
Why do I think it's more expensive? Because I have no evidence to suggest that it's not.
Say that again. Why do you think it's more expensive?
Because I have no evidence to suggest that it's not.
Kill yourself.
Look, nobody can hear you when you're cold. You turn the mic down.
That's so bad. No way. Say that one more time. Why do you think it's not more expensive? Why do you think it's more expensive?
I'll say it one more time. Look, one more time. You want me to say it slowly?
Yeah. I'll say it real slow.
Because I have no evidence that it's not.
You're embarrassing the fuck out of yourself. You're really dumb.
Oh my gosh, this retard is like so low.
Your argument is actually so bad that everyone in the audience right now, unanimously, every single member of this audience knows the problem with your argument. I don't even have to say it. Everyone knows why you're wrong. You're just a fucking retard.
Yeah, so does me saying I have no evidence that my claim is false mean that I have no evidence my claim is true?
What the fuck are you trying to say?
Yeah. So you asked me, why do I believe this? I said, I have no evidence to suggest that I'm wrong. Do you think that also means I have no evidence to suggest that I'm right?
Yo, real
yes,
quick.
Because that's the reason why you said you believe it, is because of your lack of evidence against it. So if you had never researched, just to be clear, hold on, I want to ask one thing and we can end the debate here. Saucy, do you have any evidence to believe that Joe Biden did not dick down your mom? Do you have any evidence?
Oh, yes, I have tons of evidence to believe that.
Really?
Yes.
Did you see him not dicking down your mom?
Yes, I've actually observed my mom.
What if he fucked your mom while you weren't looking?
Ooh, but I haven't never looked at my mom, right? I've always been looking at my
but what if he was just doing it while you weren't looking?
All right.
Do you have any evidence that Joe Biden? You have any evidence against the claim that Joe Biden fucked your mom while you weren't looking?
Just to be clear, look, just so we can end this debate.
This guy watches his mom in the shower. Who just typed that?
I do watch my mom.
Get this retard off the stage.
All right,
drag him down.
We're gonna move on. Thank you, Saucy, for that. But yeah, Paul, you can debate Sinthe.
Yeah, that show was funny as fuck. What's up?
What's good?
Nothing much. You're gonna hear a bunch of background noise, so my apologies for that. So give me one sec. Hold up.
Player one says what?
Okay, so yeah, I'm pretty sure you believe that the logical problem of evil is a successful argument against God's existence, assuming that God is like an omnipotent being, correct?
Depending on your definition of God, it can be. I don't think it's an issue with all of the
so,
definitions of God. I think the Bayesian problem of evil is one that applies to all good gods.
Yeah, I remember we had an unfinished conversation regarding the LPOE specifically being a successful argument or evidence against the proposition that God exists, assuming that by God you're stipulating omnibenevolence, which is a morally perfect being, just to be clear, right?
Yeah, if you have a being which is all-knowing and all-powerful and all good, then yeah, I would say I would say the logical problem of evil is an issue with that definition of God, yeah.
Okay, so to be clear, let's say someone defines an all-good being as just a moral agent, or just an all-good entity. It's just a moral agent, which is perfect insofar as it has never committed any moral action. You think there'd be a contradiction?
No. I think it only comes when you can when you know all the bad things that are happening and you sit there doing nothing about it. That's when the issue happens.
Yeah, I'm stipulating that like God knows all the facts of the universe. Like he knows all things, right? He knows all the things which will happen and which are currently happening and which has happened. So he knows all the facts. And he's also omnipotent insofar as he has the ability to change these facts over time. He's in control of all the possibilities. And also, he satisfies the definition I've just provided of omnipotent.
You can change all facts, right?
Yeah, like he has the ability, right?
Yeah. So then
you
there's
think
no
a
there's no
contradiction in
fact
all of
that you'll
those
be able to.
stipulations.
Yeah. So there's no fact you'll be able to give me, right? There's not a fact that's going to exist out there that God couldn't change. Agreed?
That God couldn't change.
Yeah, he could change all facts. You said.
Yeah, when I said God can change all facts, it means in the sense where it is the case that for a given fact X at time 0, it is the case that that fact can come out of a state from existence to non-existence insofar as in time 1, for example, it is no longer a fact.
So there's no fact God can't change. Agreed?
Well, given the definition I've given, it would be the case that God can change facts, but it really depends on the semantics.
Yeah. So there's no fact that God can't change. Yes.
Depends on if you believe that that specific proposition is incompatible with necessitarianism, which I am a necessitarian, by the way. So what do you think about that?
So you're a necessitarian, but I'm sure you'd say something like God can change what's necessary.
No.
God doesn't dictate the metaphysical laws?
Necessary, it isn't. Excuse me?
God doesn't define the metaphysical law?
Metaphysical law, what do you define as a metaphysical law?
So when you say necessary, I'm guessing you're using the metaphysical modal scope. So just the things that are necessary, the things that are entailed by the metaphysical laws?
Well, I take metaphysical modality to be kind of identical to logical modality. I just believe that like a lot of things. Yeah.
Does logic pre-exist God? Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so I was just going to say that, like, so for things which you believe to be logically possible, it's really just possible insofar as imagination is concerned, but I believe that it is an illusion created from the fact that we don't possess divine knowledge.
Okay, so you think there is some fact which justifies any particular thing that happens?
By justifies, in what sense of justification are you talking about?
Like, is a reason why it's still the best state of affairs. Whatever happens is the best state of affairs.
Motivational reasons, normative reasons, epistemic reasons, please clarify. Okay, so yeah, of course, I believe that there's a normative reason which justifies all events which occurs in the universe, despite all events being caused fundamentally by the existence of God.
Okay, and that proposition is one you know to be true, correct?
Absolutely.
Okay, so no matter what you do, you know there's some justification for why it happened.
Yeah.
So if you were to beat a baby to death with a shovel, you would know it's justified.
No. It's not justified for me to do it, but it's justified for God to create a circumstance in which that's happened.
Well, you know that there's some justification for it occurring, right? And you've brought about its occurrence?
Yeah, we can just say that justification, in the normative sense, it is going to be indexed to whether or not there's some sense of moral accountability, right? So, for instance, let's say, for example, I do an action, okay? For that action, or for me to do something which is immoral, for it to classify me as an immoral agent, at least in that context, you'd have to be making the proposition that I was morally accountable, correct?
Well, you would say you are morally accountable if you beat a baby to death with a shovel, right?
Yeah, I just don't believe that moral accountability crosses over to God. And so, for any event...
That's fine. You just think it doesn't matter if it crosses over to God. But that's not the argument.
Okay.
You're saying there's some fact that justifies it. And that's a fact that you know to be true. You know that there's some fact that justifies it. So you're aware of there being a justification for the action of you beating a child.
Justifies the action?
If you choose to do so.
Yeah, so
it justifies you doing an action is just bringing about a state of affairs. Yeah, so like
you're using the language really weirdly. So usually when you're talking about an action being justified, we're talking about an action being justified indexed to the person committing the action or any specific thing which is involved in the causal chain of that action being justified or being done.
Well, all it means to do an action is to bring about a state of affairs, right?
Absolutely.
Okay, so if there's some justification for a particular state of affairs, and there was a justification for bringing about that state of affairs.
Yeah, that's just a tautology. But what I'm arguing here is simply, when you're saying justification for a state of affairs, right? The idea that I'm really trying to get across here is simply that when you're talking about normative justification, we're usually baking in moral accountability with it. So for instance, we say an action is justified specifically based on which person we are assessing when assessing that action. So we're usually assessing two things. So the person who executes the action or anything which is involved in the causal chain of that action, and the action itself and the consequences from that action. So I'm saying that when you're saying the action is justified, are you saying it is justified holistically or independently of any specific entity which is involved in the action, or are you specifically indexing it to a particular entity? Which
so I'm saying on net, all things considered, it's justified.
all things considered.
Yeah, which is
Further
the type of
clarification,
justification you're saying God has, right? The same type of justification you're saying God has is a justification for this state of affairs, right? It's to say this is the best possible state of affairs. So no matter
No,
what you
that's not
do,
what I'm arguing.
you're already, you did say it, you did say that God has brought about the best possible state of affairs. You did say that.
No, I
so
never made that claim.
If you did, in this debate I asked
No,
you whether
I
or not it's the
said-
case God,
no.
yes, it's
Incorrect.
recorded. You're wrong.
It's recorded
So-
that I did not say this. I specifically said
that's
there are a
not
couple
how
of things I've
recordings
said.
work, but you don't record a lack of audio, you record the audio. But
Wait, hold on. You
it is
don't think
recorded
you
on a,
reduce a lack of something happening based off watching a recording and listen to a recording?
so that's not what I just said. So what I'm
So
saying is that,
would
and
not be a
also
non-point.
also
What I
answer your
said is
question.
also-
No,
what I'm saying there is
but with
hold
the, hold on. You don't need to
Okay,
just
can
you don't need to
go
just
to
fill
the
out the
point?
air.
That's
I just want to fucking focus on the argument here. So if you
Take your
don't think
time.
it's the case that God created the best possible state of affairs, then you're not a necessitarian.
That doesn't follow.
And now you're. So is it the case that there's any better state of affairs that's possible?
Depends on the mode of scope you're employing of the conversation.
Logical.
Okay, no.
No. Okay. So if it's not logically possible to have a better state of affairs, this is the best possible state of affairs.
Under a
All other
logical
modal scopes will be
sure.
will be more narrow than logical. So I don't know why you ask what it depends on the modal scope. It doesn't apparently.
Of course, you'd have to class the clarification in question. Of course, definitely.
Are there modal scope? What modal scope are you thinking of where there are things that are logically impossible but possible in the modal scope?
Demonstrate the relevance of this question, please.
Because you made a claim. It
And what
directly
the
addresses your
is,
claim.
Which made the claim. Which
Okay,
claim did
so-
I make? Which made the question relevant?
This is trolling. So if you think it's the case,
Okay.
right? If you think it's the case that the modal scope would matter there, then obviously you think that there are some modal scopes where things which are logically impossible can be possible in that modal scope. Yes?
How does that follow?
Is it just trivial?
Someone
how it
can
follows?
ask you. Someone
So-
can ask you a question. Hold on, just to be
Mhm.
clear,
Let's
just to
hear-
clear all the confusion here. Someone can ask you a question regarding what modal scope you're referring to without making any sort of independent proposition on the nature of other modal scopes as it pertains to the conversational content.
If you're
I
asking
don't see-
what
I don't
modal
see where
scope am I
you got the deduction
referencing,
from.
and there's only one state
Mm-hmm.
of affairs that's logically possible, then it's irrelevant what modals. Because if I was asking about any other modal scope, the answer would be the same, which is yes. This is the best possible state of affairs across all of them, because it's the best logically possible according to you. So if it's the best
think that's
logically
entailed
possible
from the
state of affairs,
proposition.
yes. If it's the best
Where's the
logically
logical
possible state of
contradiction? Where's the
because if
logical
something is
contradiction? Someone
logically
grants- Hold on,
necessary,
hold on.
then it's
Did I
necessary
ask
on
you a
all more
question?
narrow modal scopes.
Did I finish the question real quickly before you ask me a question?
I didn't
Where's
ask
the
you a
logical contradiction in someone granted the proposition that this is the best logically possible state of affairs, and there's some conceptual assessment of modality which would actually make it the case that my question was relevant? Where's the contradiction?
So I just told you. So the contradiction
You didn't say-
is
you didn't
that
say P
you,
and not
I
P.
just. Do you want? I can put it to P and not P, but the P and not
Yeah,
P
that's
is not
what
going
the
to get you any more
contradiction
clear.
is, then.
So no, you can give a contradiction in more phrases than P and not P. That's ridiculous. So here's the form
I
of
love
P
to
and
hear
not
this.
P, because if you have any contradiction, all other contradiction follows. So the contradiction is both that it's the case that it is not a logical necessity for this particular state of affairs to be the case, and that it is a logical necessity for this particular state of affairs to be the
The
case.
second proposition right of the contradiction, could you establish the deductive entailment between what you're talking about and the second proposition? to
second one?
generate the contradiction? Yeah, which is that there's no
Do you mind to mix
logical necessity.
Okay, so that's what you're asking
Yes.
about. So you're asking, there's not a logical necessity. Why do I think that that's entailed? Well, the reason why it's entailed is because you're
Absolutely.
saying it's the case that you did not agree. You don't think it's the case. This is the logical, or that this is the best possible state of affairs, right? And if you're saying it's not the best possible, but it is the best logically possible,
never made
that
any
means it's
affirmation about this.
logically. Yes, you did.
No,
Okay,
you-
this
you're
is
getting
you're
things
doing
twisted
doing
again.
like
So
a
the pro-
you're
Jen,
doing
the
like an
problem-
autism
hold on,
thing
hold
where
on,
you're just like
there's a
confused at what's
specific
going on in the
problem, Jen.
conversation.
There's
So
a
I'm going to try to
specific
move the
problem.
conversation forward instead of looping on the silly point here. So
Okay,
let's
gotcha. We
hopefully
can
move the
move-
conversation here. Yeah,
Okay,
let's,
yeah, because you weren't really
if
getting
you're not
the point,
understanding
that's
this,
fine.
this is genuinely just like
No,
schizophrenia.
I feel concerned
If
about
everything-
the fact that you're tracking the
If
meta points.
everything that you're going to do in this conversation is just going to rely on you forgetting the things that you've said, I'm going to try my best to
I'm not
just remind
forgetting
you of
anything.
them
You're
as
just
it
having
happens,
it-
and
you
then we're
just
going to
made the
move forward in the
claim.
conversation
Wait,
by
what? You never
hopefully
done?
pointing out that you think it's the case that we exist
What?
in the best logically possible state of affairs. So, just to be clear, no matter what I
Said you're
do,
confused,
we are
Paul,
still
you're-
in the logically best possible state of affairs. You muted yourself. No, that wasn't a server mute there. So
So
Yeah, sorry,
if
there's
it's
a bunch of background.
everything
So
we
to be
do,
clear in this sense,
everything that we do, we are still in the logic. I don't know why you're just trying
Okay.
to fucking fill out the dead air here. Like I try my best to like let you talk when you want to talk, but you just constantly talk over, and it doesn't work for you because your microphone's garbage, right? So like, just listen. So if you think the situation that we are currently in,
listening.
no matter what decision you possibly make, is still the logically best possible state of affairs, and you know that's the case, you know it's the case, we're in the logically best possible state of affairs, then you know the world could not have been any better if it was the case that you didn't beat that baby to death with the shovel. It wouldn't have made the world any better. It would have been a worse world.
Yeah, so there's a confusion there. So there's a confusion you've been making the entire time, whereas you confused me specifically and not made the specific claim, and me saying I specifically disbelieve in the proposition that this is the best logically possible state of affairs. I've clarified on numerous occasions, right, when you've asked the question specifically, which is it the case that this is the best possible way in which the world could have been? I said it depends on what you mean by possibility, what's the model scope there.
But it wouldn't.
You interpreted that as, hold on, quiet. You interpreted me
Oh my
asking a
God.
clarificatory question regarding what model scope you're employing in that specific question, with me specifically making an affirmative proposition regarding this not being the best logically possible state of affairs after I quite literally then
You said it
clarified
is the
afterwards
best
that I
logically
believe in
possible
that
state of affairs.
proposition.
Yeah, I know. That's
I
what a
said specifically
contradiction
it
is.
was.
Yeah,
After
that's
you
a
thought that
contradiction.
I was saying something which contradicts that. Yeah, you can't say
You
that
did.
individual proposition is a contradiction.
No, I'm saying
There's
the
no way of being
contradiction is the
serious.
fact that you both affirmed that proposition and negated it, because what you said is
When
it
have I ever
depends
said
on
it
the
is not
modal
the best
scope,
logically
when in
possible?
fact, because you said it depends on the modal scope.
Okay, so what about me saying it depends on the model scope, which entails that I make it the negation of the proposition that it is the best.
That would mean
logically
that for
possible
some
state of
modal
affairs?
scopes, the answer would be different.
Okay, so hold on there a second. You understand that there's nothing within you establishing modal semantical relevancy, which would establish the idea that I would be affirming the negation of the proposition you think I affirmed previously, which would establish the
did.
contradiction. You
So look,
understand
I'll
this?
explain it to you, right? Well, yeah, it definitely does. It's very obvious why it does, but I'll explain it to you step by step. I'm gonna ask you a couple of yes or no questions to hopefully get you there, right? The first one is, do you agree that for it to depend on the modal scope, that would mean that there are some modal scopes for which it's the case that this is not the best possible world?
That does not have to be true. But that's one of the
Yes, it
propositions
does.
which entail that. No, it could be the case that you're not making an information
So-
regarding there being such modal
so you
scopes, but
don't
there
recognize
possibly
that.
being such modal scopes.
So your answer is no, you don't recognize that.
I'm saying that's not necessary. to
Can
be
you answer my
affirmed
question?
For someone to express such judgment.
Okay. You think you can say it depends on the modal scope, even though no matter which modal scope you choose, it's always the same answer? You think that's consistent?
I think it is consistent in the sense where you can make an argument that it possibly depends on the modal scope, which would allow for the possibility of the question you're asking to actually not be relevant to what I was talking.
Okay. So here's an example, right? So imagine that I ask you, are there eggs at the store? And then you say, well, it depends on which store I go to. And then I ask, okay, are there any stores around you that don't have eggs? And then you say, no, they've all got eggs. And I ask you, wait, hold on. So you said it depends which store you go to? And you say, yeah, it does. And then I say again, but are there any that don't have eggs? And you say, no, they've all got eggs. But it still depends on which one I go to, whether or not they have eggs. Would you see why that would be like a retarded way to speak and would
Yes,
obviously be a
in that
contradiction?
example, definitely. But you have to understand there are former nuances in the current thing we're talking about.
There is not a matter of nuances. If you are saying, look, if you're saying that it's the case that it depends on the modal scope, that would mean that some of the modal scope will give
Please
you
repeat
different
everything you
answers.
just said.
Because that's what depends means.
Sinthe, repeat every single thing you've just said. Background
Okay.
noise. Mine. Yes.
I got you. So if you're saying the answer to that question depends on X, that would mean that for some of the X's that you could choose, the answer would be different. That's what depends means.
It is different, or it could be different.
It is.
Okay, so what if I'm just referencing the possibility of it being different, which is why I'm
Then you
referencing
wouldn't
the
say-
dependency.
Then you wouldn't say it does depend, you would say it could depend.
Not necessarily. So, for instance,
Yes.
if you, let's say, ask me, I'll give you an example. All right, so the store example, right? So let's say I'm not even aware of whether or not there are any other stores which I could purchase a specific item from. And so you ask me a specific question, right, regarding the price of a given item you want to purchase. And I say, well, whether or not it costs XYZ price depends on the store you're going to. Now, that claim specifically does not mean that I'm inherently presupposing that there are any other stores right? Because for all I know, there could be
you're
other
presupposing.
Hold on,
Yeah,
hold on,
it
hold
would
on.
mean that you do
Let me
think
finish,
it's
let
the
me finish.
case that there are
Wait, let me
different
finish.
prices, different stores.
Wait, you were complaining about me interrupting a while ago, so just let me finish this point real quick.
All you did is
I
interrupt.
was just gonna say, yeah, that's fine. I was just gonna say that, like, in the case I'm talking about, we'll just say it depends on the store you are going to purchase a particular item. Okay. I'm making this claim, or rather, yeah, I'm making that claim. However, it is not the case that I'll necessarily be affirming the existence of other stores, but rather I'm granting and acknowledging instead of neglecting the possibility of there being other stores, which is why the claim seems feasible, even if it's just one store which exists. Right?
Okay,
So that's
but
the
the
whole
issue is
point.
it's actually not even possible, right? So, like, one, I think your example there, you're still crazy, right? So, in the example, no, if it depends which store you go to, what the price will be, that means that different stores have different prices. That's why that's true. Yeah, different stores do have different prices. That's why it does depend on which store you go to. If every store
that doesn't mean
had
that
one
there are
fixed
other
price,
stores.
then somebody saying that it depends which store you go to, they'd be fucking crazy. But the funny thing is, you can't even invoke the possibility argument there. Like, even if all of that wasn't fucking crazy, which it definitely is, even if it wasn't fucking crazy, you couldn't invoke the possibility argument because it's not possible. It's logically necessary for this state of affairs to be the way it is. So it's impossible for any modal scope, no matter what the modal scope you choose is,
Yeah,
it would be impossible for it to be otherwise
Okay.
because all the modal scopes are going to be more narrow than logical. Do you think there is a modal scope which is less narrow, broader than the logical modal scope? Yes or no?
So before I respond to that question, I'm going to address the points.
Bro, this
you
guy
made
does not answer
previously
questions.
to that question. No, I'm going to answer the points you've made first. That's how it's going to work. So just
You're
a couple of
definitely not
things.
going to
It
answer the
started
question.
off. Hold on. It started off. Hold on. This conversation started off from some minuscule problems, confusions you've had, and it just keeps on increasing. So
Confusion's
the
not bad.
example you've given. Okay, you talk about it being crazy. No, Synth, it's not crazy actually. Maybe if you actually understood the crux of what my point actually is, it isn't crazy, right? Because again, all I'm saying there and all I'm presupposing there is that what determines and fixes the prices of a specific item is the store you're purchasing that item from. Now you can agree
Yeah.
with the proposition that
So different
wait,
stores
hold
have
on.
different
You're
prices,
being a
right?
bit too hasty, Synth. You're being way too hasty. Just
You're
relax
never
for a
going to
second.
answer my question, bro.
So Synth, hold on. Okay.
Let's hear it.
So I was just gonna say that yeah, we both grant this proposition. However, that proposition can be granted even if it is the case that someone does not have a judgment regarding whether or not there are only one store that exists or more than one store that exists. They're just saying it depends on the store in the sense where if you were to buy it from a store which could exist, which does not exist, the price may change. That's rational, and there's nothing crazy about this. I'm not sure you don't understand this.
Okay, you're unironically this may just be an ESL moment because this is fucking deranged. But you said you were going to answer my question and you still
said your
didn't.
point
Do you
is
think you
deranged?
answered my
Oh, that would
question?
be definitely correct.
Do you think you've answered my question?
Absolutely.
What was my question that you answered?
The question regarding you asking me if it is the case that there's some compatibility between believing that it depends on the store you're purchasing the item from,
No.
and you believing that it is the case that it is the only store, in the
No.
sense where it would
So-
not create an unintuitive consequence. That was the question.
No. I asked
That
you
was not
very
the question,
simply.
sir. Not your own
Yes,
question.
you are correct that is not the question. That was not the question. You were very wrong about what the question was. However, here's the
I was
question.
asking
I'll
the
present it
question when I was
again,
saying that
and
that
I
was
will
not the
give you.
question. So it would be
I
a
will
correct
give
question.
you. I will give you what the question was, and hopefully you'll hear it. Okay. Here's the question. The question I asked you
I'm
was
listening.
yes or no. Do you believe that there is a modal scope which is more broad than logical? Do you think you've answered that question?
I don't have a judgment on that proposition.
Okay. You don't have a judgment
Yeah.
on whether or not you answered that question?
You don't have to affirm a proposition regarding the nature of other modal scopes.
Okay.
You believe
So,
that there
I'm
is a
glad that
possibility
you
such
are-
existence.
I'll be honest with you. I do consider
sound really
I am
confused.
agnostic
Are you
on
okay?
that. Even though it's a crazy answer, I do agree that I am agnostic
Crazy
on that
based
is an
off what
answer.
specifically? When
But
you're
that
saying
was
it's
an answer
crazy,
to the
what does that
question that
mean?
you had not answered previously, and somehow you managed to dodge a new question. So just to be really clear, you agree that prior to
Okay.
saying that you're agnostic on it or you don't have a judgment on it, you had not answered that question, correct?
I would not say so. I would
You
not
would
say I've
not
not
say
answered the
that?
question. I think
You
all
need
the
to
points
listen to
you
this
made in
back,
the
bro. You
conversation.
fucking sound
In fact,
crazy.
hold on. I think
But
me
go ahead.
saying currently that I'm agnostic on whatever the question was you're talking about. I think me saying this is just an emphasis and the repetition of what I've said previously, which you've just not tracked. So if anything, it's
Yeah,
not
I
me
don't think I'm
dodging,
having
it's just
issues
you
tracking.
finally grasping the thing I've not dodged.
I feel like I'm having a really easy time tracking you. I feel like you're just saying a bunch of stupid shit. And generally, I don't think you say that much stupid shit. So I think there are a lot of views that I disagree with you on, but not that stupid.
Okay,
but
wait, so
look,
just
here's
one thing
the
we can
issue. I don't know why
investigate
you're trying. Look, I gave you time to speak, right? You do talk for these like long monologues that relate in no way to what's being said, and then you interrupt constantly.
I really don't.
The Apollo strategy. Here's the Apollo strategy. It's the breakdown. This is where we throw the nukes out. We talk about the other person's strategy. We make it really hard for the other person to debate in the future. Here's the Apollo strategy: is long-winded, rambling nonsense that no way relates to the point, and you dodge every question constantly, and then you feign agnosticism when somebody presses you on the question. As long as you just mock that, there's literally nothing else he's got. So
We're
Apollo,
waiting for it to
we'll
actually
go
get to
through
the
the
point
argument.
now.
I'm gonna get you. Don't worry, buddy. We're moving forward in the argument. I'm gonna make
worried
sure
about
that
you,
you.
actually. I'm really
I'm gonna
concerned.
force you
I'm
to
really
move
worried
forward
about you.
instead of just
I'm really
us
worried,
looping back
son.
and forth on meta. Here's the move forward. So
Yeah, take your
if you
time,
think it's the
Tom.
case that it's logically necessary, then if it's logically necessary for things to be the way they are, then they could not have been different no matter what I did. Because I couldn't have done differently, in fact. No matter if something's logically necessary, if some state of affairs is logically necessary, then I couldn't have made it any other way. So if an action, as you've agreed, an action is when you bring about a state of affairs, if it's the case that it's the best possible state of affairs, is the one that is the result of my action, and that's true for any action anyone's ever done, then for any action anyone's ever done, they've brought about the best possible states of affairs. If somebody's brought about the best possible states of affairs, then they are justified in that action. If they knowingly do so, they are justified under every sane view. If you right now, Apollo, if you beat a baby to death with a shovel, according to the claims that you've already said out loud, that would entail that you've done the thing which you knew to bring about the best possible state of affairs. True? Yeah, we're gonna hit the hay after that. All right, we should if Apollo's gone, we should move on to Puppy Coco, who wants to be pulled up. Puppy Coco even still in chat? Yeah, Puppy Coco's still in chat. You gotta raise your hand.
Yeah, I got muted. My bad. So just to respond to what you've said, really, I'm gonna address everything you've said. I was just gonna say I just
What do you
found it
mean you
really
got muted?
comical
You muted
that
your
you
damn
complained. You complained, Synth, about long-winded responses, and they gave the longest response of the conversation. Just to address a
That's
couple
not-
of things, right? Yeah, let's relax for a second. You're like really spazzing out. So just to address a
That's really
couple of
not-
things, no, Synth, I don't agree that it is the case. If it is the case, and the fake laugh is going to help you right now. If
That's a
it
fake
is
laugh.
the case that it is logically possible, logically necessary for X to occur, then it could not be the case that under some other given modal scope, it could actually be possible.
Not in
for
a
it to
different
not
modal
occur. I
scope.
don't agree with this proposition, actually.
Nobody said a different
I
modal
don't have
scope.
to make an information. Hold on. I don't have to be able to specifically articulate the modal scope for me to grant the possibility, the epistemic possibility that such modal scope exists. Right? I would like
There's
to
no-
ask you the
Oh,
question.
an
which you've
epistemic
been
possibility of that modal scope existing?
Doing that thing again, whereas you're just trying to steamroll the conversation with your quicksilver rhetoric instead of actually addressing the substance because you're incapable.
Quicksilver rhetoric.
So yeah, and you're laughing because you're coming to the self-realization that what I'm saying is actually correct. So
That's
just
right, that's
real
right.
quickly, you've been deviating from the thing
It
that
was
I'm
just
trying to
funny.
be pressing on, which is simply how does it follow from the antecedents there that under all specific conceptual assessments of the term possibility, it would be the case that it is not sure that it could be otherwise. Granted,
Because
logicalness
the-
is turn this in.
Yeah, given you said an epistemically possible
time,
modal
we're
scope,
with you, Sin.
there's no
Mhm.
time that needs to be taken. You just have to like listen. So, given you said epistemically possible modal scope, I'm sure you agree epistemic possibility is more narrow than logical possibility. Correct?
I'm agnostic on that claim. Depends on one's epistemology.
You're agnostic. What?
Absolutely.
You think there are? You think that there are
epistemology is a
things
very
which are
nuanced
epistemically possible, but logically, you think they are logically impossible. You think those exist?
Depends on the logical system you accept, Synth, which grounds your epistemology. That's not surprising.
Under the logical system you accept is the one we're indexing it to.
I thought you're making a much more holistic claim in the assessment.
The logical system that you ascribe to, in which you think it's the case that all states of affairs are logically
Wow.
necessary. Why do you mean wow? If you think it's the
Because
case
you're now
that
changing the
you're trying
goalpost.
to adapt to pretend that you have my
Adapting?
rhetorical style, it's really corny. It's just really weird. So
Not
just
corny.
engage with the argument. What you said is that it's the case that it's logically necessary. So are there things
course.
which are, according to your definition of the words logical and your definition of the word epistemic, are there things which are epistemically possible but logically impossible? Yes or no?
and all the confusion, Synth. So the first time
Yes
when
or no to
I
my
granted the
question,
possible-
retard.
hold
Don't do
on,
this
hold on.
over and over
You're
again.
not
Yes
gonna
or
just
no?
do this weird thing which you believe.
Look, the
that's
only
a
thing that we
yes or
can
no
do with
retort
Apollo
is
is you
gonna
just
make
have
you
to
seem more
force him to get a yes or no
Synth,
answer out. Yes or
what
no,
you're doing
Apollo?
is nothing you're doing is
Look, I'm
compelling,
asking for a
right?
yes or no to my
And in
question.
verse
Is it
with
the case
IQ
there are things which are
25 is clearly
logically
acknowledging the
impossible,
fact that what
but
you're doing here is
epistemically
trying to
possible? Yes
steamroll
or
the
no?
conversation. I'm gonna wait
Is
for
it the
this to
case there are
now.
things which are logically impossible, but epistemically possible? Yes or no?
Not a yes or no question, Synth. I'll explain why. Do you want me to explain why it's not a yes or no question?
Is that a proposition embedded into that question?
Just because there's a proposition embedded in the question does not mean that the responses to that question in the form of yes or no or I agree or I disagree would be sufficient responses, which would be informative.
You can say they're not sufficient,
You're
but they should be the
retarded.
beginning of your
That was,
response
like,
because it's a
actually retarded.
proposition.
So could I
So it's
respond
true
to
or
the question?
false. All propositions are true or false. You're not going to respond to the question. You're going to ignore the question and go on a
I'm going to
dialogue tree.
respond to the question
So
like I've
yes
been doing the
or
entire
no,
time.
is this true?
Yes or
Either
no,
it's true or
neither
it's
of these
not
things
true.
are sufficient informative responses, Synth.
I don't care what you think is an informative response. I just want an answer.
You don't think truth can depend on context, Synth?
Answer my question.
Answer my question.
Your question came after mine. I'm not going to answer it.
So now it's funny because now you're going to actually complain about me asking you a yes or no question when you were actually complaining about this previously. About me
I'm not
answering your yes or no
complaining
question,
about
which
your
depends on
question
context.
being a yes or no. I'm complaining about it
My
being a
question
question that came
directly
after
ties to
mine
your
as a dodge
question.
of my question.
You don't think my question
Okay,
relates to your
was there
question?
any part of my question you didn't understand?
I understand every single part of your question. It was one-dimensional, Synth. It was really
Okay, then you should
basic.
be able to answer you should be able to give me an inquiry as per the one fucking dimension of that question. Is it true? Or is
Doesn't
it a
have to
not
be yes or
true
no,
proposition?
Synth,
It
I don't know
does.
if you're just really
I'm sorry,
socially
do you believe in the
autistic
law
to
of the split in the middle?
understand that there are questions that can be answered
You can
without just
say,
saying
I
yes
don't
or
know.
no.
That's fine. Do you not know?
I know that you just don't have the social cues to understand.
You're not
that
going
you
to
can
answer that
have
question
informed
either.
response
This is
because yes or
insane.
no, which is actually not dodging the question.
This is the most embarrassing thing I've ever heard you do, genuinely. So I'm asking you very simply,
Is
right?
this like another projection of your
I
instinct?
want to hopefully move the conversation forward in some way and
Can we just
hopefully
go back
make
to the
some
moral
dialectical
accountability stuff?
progress, but I know you don't want that to happen. So I'm going to
I
try
would
my
love
best
for
to
that
get
to
you to
happen. I've been
understand
trying to
this.
get that to happen the entire
So,
time.
do you think it's the case that there is
Okay.
anything, any random thing, any random state of affairs, which is logically impossible, but epistemically possible? You can say yes, no, or I don't know. And if you don't want any of those three, would you rather say I prefer not to answer? Which one of those would you
It
go
can
with?
be both dependent on the epistemology sense.
Oh my god, I'm asking about yours. I already told you very clearly, based on your
In
definition
my
of epistemology,
no
based
sense,
on
but
your...
hold on.
There we go. No,
Sense,
it wasn't
in
that
my
complicated of a question. Thank
epistemology,
you so much. You
no.
finally answered the
But
question. The answer is
are we gonna
no.
continue yapping?
So,
Are we gonna
if there
continue
is
yapping?
nothing... No, it
The
doesn't matter
first
what you...
claim
Look,
did not
if
the
you think
first
it's the
claim did not make
case
an epistemic
that it's
possibility,
not epistemically, under your definitions, when you invoke those terms, if it is not epistemically possible to have something which is logically impossible, then it must be the case that any modal scope which you have epistemic access to must be one which is more narrow or equally narrow to the logical modal scope. You cannot have one that's more broad. This very trivially, straightforwardly follows. So it does
Now,
not
do you
depend
want
on
me
which
to-
modal scope you
Are you
go.
done?
It does not
Are you
depend
not
on which. No, I'm not done. It does not depend on which. I'm
Okay.
just gonna fucking ramble indefinitely like you do. So it does not
Oh,
depend on which fucking
so
modal
boring.
scope you choose. There's no modal scope dependency there. If it's logically necessary, then it's necessary under all the other modal scopes that you believe are real. Every single one that you're committed to, you think that each and every other single one, it's also logically necessary under that one. So you should have no more modal scope confusion for the rest of this debate. Now going forward, making some dialectical progress now, if it's the case that you think that I don't know why you're doing the laughing thing like you're trying to affect the rhetoric. If you think it's the case that the state of affairs that you're
laughing at
currently
you,
in
son.
are logically
Embarrassing.
necessary, you're not doing well here.
Okay.
If you think the current state of
I'm
affairs
waiting
and
for it to
all
stop,
state
yeah.
of affairs that have ever existed are logically necessary, then there's nothing that you've ever done which would not make the world the best possible world, because it is the only possible world. If it is the only possible world, then it is the best possible world. True or false?
Now that you're done, yapping.
You're not going to answer that one either. That's so sad. So that's exactly what I fucking thought would happen. So let's try again. The question I asked you was a true, false question. You can say, I don't know, or I prefer not to answer. Which one do you want to go?
You're so scared for me to give a response. If you give a long
Who the fuck would be scared of you? You're like
you
washed
don't
up.
want me to. Of course you
You're doing
definitely.
terrible.
I'm getting back on us right now. So anyways, I'm going to address the point and explain to you and dog walk you through it.
Do you want to dog walk through an answer to my question?
Yeah, I'm going to dog walk you through why you made a non-point, dumb fuck. So just to be clear, this
Oh my god, he's never going to answer
answer
regarding
it.
the acceptance of the
This is so
possibility.
incredibly sad.
You're yapping again. You're doing this weird thing where you believe that
Why wouldn't I
speed
interrupt you?
yapping
You're just
makes you
obviously
seem
interrupt. You're just
rhetorically
obviously
dominant,
constantly
okay?
interrupting. I'm gonna
You're
interrupt
so
you back.
scared. This is
And
like
if you don't have
actually
any
like
kind of
I've
response to
never
my
seen you
questions,
this
you can't
scared,
answer
Sim.
true or false.
I've
Bro, I'm
never seen
terrified
you
right
this
now. I'm
scared.
fucking
I've
petrified.
never seen you this
Can
scared.
you
You're
just
just
try your
panicking.
best to answer my question?
So could I just finish the point I was going to make? So just to be clear
No,
again,
you can't finish
right?
the point you were gonna
first
make.
claim I
Answer
made
my question,
specifically,
then you
you're
can finish your point.
confused. Synth, you're confused.
What are you doing?
Okay.
This is so
I'm pointing
pathetic.
out your
Look,
confusion, Synth.
just
That's what I'm
answer the
doing. So
question.
could
I
I
don't
actually
care what you
address your
think the
points?
confusion is.
Why do you
No,
make like
answer the
10
question, then
different
address the
points
point.
and then want me to address your question? I'm going to address
You
the
can,
points
if
first.
you answer the question,
In
because you
chronological
look, the
order.
issue, I would trust you to do that
Like,
if it
come
wasn't
on.
for the things that I've already fucking shat on you
No,
for doing
because
this debate.
what
We've
you
all
want me to
seen
do
you
is
attempt. Look,
answer your
you've
question
poisoned.
and go off to
You've
a
poisoned
viewpoint
everyone to that strategy
without
now.
me
You can't use that
addressing the
rhetorical
10
strategy
different
anymore
points you made
because
previously.
after you said you were going to
Since
address
you're
my
actually,
points,
this
then
is
answer
like
the
the
question.
most
What you ended up
petrified I've
doing
ever seen in any
was
debate
not
whatsoever.
answering the question at all,
What's up with your
and you
confidence? You're losing
even
confidence.
seem to recognize you had not answered the question. So I
I'm
would
not
like you to
recognizing
answer my
any sort of
question first,
dodging in the
and the
bad faith manner
moment that
that
you
you're
answer
thinking
my
about.
question, I will go silent, let you ramble for as long as you want to. So if you want to answer my question, do that up front because I know damn well you're not actually going to append it to the end because we caught
Okay,
you not
so
doing
ask
that
the
earlier. Everyone
question
saw
and
it
then
happen.
promise me you not talk when I'm talking to respond to the other point.
I promise you,
Go.
after you answer my question, I will not speak.
Okay.
I will interrupt you if you dodge my question. So,
Okay,
my
go for
question
it.
to you, right? I want to make some dialectical progress here. So, is this true or false? If this is the only logically possible state of affairs, then this is the best logically possible state of affairs. True or false?
Under my semantics, definitely sure. Now, could I make some addressals or responses to the previous points you made? So, to be clear in this, right, you specifically said, right, that it is the case that clearly, given my epistemology, it would be the case that if it is true, that I believe in classical logic clearly, and it would be the case that under my epistemology, it could not be epistemically possible for this to be the case. And I grant this. However, the first point I made, Synth, regarding me expressing agnosticism towards the idea of, yeah, thank you very much. Yeah. Anyways, someone's giving me something. Yeah, so me expressing my agnosticism towards the question and whether or not it is possible, or whether it depends on the type of possibility that's been referenced for it to determine whether or not it is possible for some logically possible state of affairs to be not possible, for it to not be the case, or rather some logically necessary. Given that specifically, when I was making that reference, I was not indexing that response to my epistemology. I was making a more holistic approach insofar as I was saying, given all specific conceptual assessments of epistemology that is available, right? It is in fact possible, doesn't have to be indexed to my epistemology, but just broadly speaking, that you could have a specific situation where something is logically possible and you're a logical necessitarian, and given some other different modal scope, it is actually not possible. And so it is the case that there's. Give me 1 second. Hold on. Oh yeah, got you. So, anyways, so Sin, just to address a couple of things, right? Just to address a couple of things, right? Someone is complaining about like me speaking a bit too loud because I'm like outside. So, anyways, to address a couple of things, as I was saying,
This guy is screaming on a park bench?
No, I'm like actually outside, like right outside my masjid, actually.
That's crazy. You're like screaming down the street.
Bro, I'm just like that, bro. I'm like
He's just
in
like
a compound.
that. Your neighbors are like,
Just,
you
in a
keep it down.
compound,
You're
but
like, I got you. I'm sorry. I'm really like that.
Yeah. So, anyways, I just have respect for elders. So
that's right. That old man told you what to do.
About, I think it's just
dog walked you. No, keep going. Keep going.
Anyways, so I was saying that there's no incompatibility between the most recent claim I've made regarding the epistemic possibility not existing, but it being the case that it would be possible given some other, you could say, possible conception of epistemology. That's my point.
That's it. Okay, so
yeah, that's really just it.
I've got some premises. I just want to know if you think these are true or false. Right? So, premise 1: all states of affairs in the real world are the best possible states of affairs. True or false?
Under my system, definitely.
Yeah, we're always talking under your system here, and we're talking about do you believe these propositions. So, premise 2: if that's true, then no matter what I do, it will still lead to the best possible state of affairs. True or false?
Of course.
Okay, so if no matter what you do, it will lead to the best possible state of affairs, then if you beat a dog to death, then rape a baby, it would lead to the best possible state of affairs. True or false?
Yeah, given the fact I'm involved in the causal chain.
Yeah, so true or false? True or false?
What's up?
So is that a true or a false to premise 3?
Is it true that it is moral? No.
No, that's not premise 3, right? Premise 3 is if no
I
matter
didn't
what
hear
you
the question
do.
properly, so yeah, I'm just
I've
trying
noticed.
to assume what you're saying cause the background noise.
Yeah. So if
Fair
no
enough,
matter
that's a
what
good
you do, it would still lead to the best possible state of affairs. Then, if you beat a dog to death, then rape a baby, it would lead to the best possible state of affairs. True or false?
It is the best possible state of affairs in the sense of logical possibility.
So true.
When you say
True?
lead to, are you
Oh
just saying
God,
that
this
like?
is so
Hold
pathetic.
on. When you
No,
say
y'all
lead
know what you're
to, it's
doing.
not pathetic.
You're not even good
It's
at
not
dodging the
pathetic. You have to
question.
clarify the terms there, of course. When you say
There's
lead to, are you
nothing here
saying that
about
it is
like.
not the best
Okay.
logically possible state of affairs? Then?
Why could not understand the words that just came out of your mouth?
Yeah, I'm Ethan. Sorry. I'm asking you: is it the case that when you're saying it leads to the best logically possible state of affairs, are you assuming that it is not the best logically possible state of affairs in the question?
No. Obviously not. What the
So
fuck?
to be clear in
So
this,
is that
I
proposition a
grant
true or a false proposition under your definition?
the proposition regarding it leading to the best, of course not, because all things in reality would be the best possible state of affairs, logically speaking.
So you said if all states of affairs in the real world are the best possible states of affairs, then no matter what you do, it would still lead to the best possible states of affairs is true. You said that.
Of course.
Okay. So if no matter what you do, it would lead to the best possible state of affairs, then if you beat a dog to death and rape a baby, it would lead to the best possible state of affairs. True or false?
Of course.
Okay, so then not false, it's actually true. So there we are. Premise 3, true. So given those premises, the conclusion is if you beat a dog to death and rape a baby, it would lead to the best possible state of affairs. That is logically valid given premises you've agreed to. Yes?
Of course.
Okay, so if you beat a dog to death and rape a baby, it would lead to the best possible state of affairs. And you know this to be true. Yes?
Yep.
Okay, so you would know that if you beat a dog to death and rape the baby, it will lead to the best possible state of affairs. Agreed?
Yes, definitely.
Okay, so that's the reductio in your fucking view.
So the issue as to why it's not a reductio is because there's like a lot of equivocation. So to be clear in this, you assume first and foremost that like the moral responsibility or accountability, which would make something immoral and moral respectively, is going to specifically and sufficiently be determined based off whether or not it leads to the best possible state of affairs given my semantics, which is not true. My account of moral accountability, which determines an action being moral and immoral respectively, is dependent on whether or not you participate in some sort of like causal relation to an action, which is non-formalized. So if you are familiar with Aristotelian causality, you'd understand this. That's just one of them, and the other one is having the irrational faculty to understand the moral facts or to know the moral facts. And so,
Yeah, I don't know how you
case,
even have
even if it is the
Aristotelian
case,
talk here.
hold on.
So it's like completely the idea you have Aristotelian talk is like deranged, given that you think we are in a logically necessary condition. So people don't have
You're doing this
capacities.
thing again, where you're interrupting again. You're interrupting again.
real
Yeah, no
quick.
shit, we interrupt each other constantly. Like you can't do the thing.
If I answered your questions, you're not interrupting, right?
Yo, guys, real
So
quick.
just
You
the
have.
other things you've been saying.
You're dodging my
Wait, hold
questions
on.
constantly.
Wait, Apollo.
Yeah.
So synth is over.
Does someone want to prematurely end the debate?
The
or something?
hour. Synth, do you want to keep going or do you need to be somewhere? Because I'm fine with like
This
if
guy
you guys
wants
like
to
want to wrap
force
it up
end the
within the
debate
next
before
10
you
minutes.
respond.
10 minutes.
Pathetic.
Even though I usually go to bed at like 10 p.m.ish and it is 10 p.m. my time, we could do a little bit longer.
You
So I'm
got
gonna give
loud
the
again.
response.
Oh, my bad. Is it fixed?
Yeah. So
Yeah.
yeah. So do you want to respond to your point, Synth, or are you gonna keep on speaking over me?
If you guys want to
Up to you.
wrap it up, give it like another 10 minutes. That's cool. But
Yeah, let's do
I
that.
was just making sure.
Like another 5 minutes or whatever. Should be fully fleshed out by then. Okay, so the reductio basically you're trying to pull off here is just to point out that given any action, considering that every specific event is the best possible or leads to the best possible state of affairs, it is the case that such event or action is morally justified. I don't think that follows. Given my account of moral justification, it would not follow. So for the LPOE to actually be successful, it has to be the case that given my account of moral justification, it is the case that these actions would be morally justified, or rather, it is the case that either all of those actions, which are obviously moral, will be morally justified, or it is the case that God specifically does immoral actions, granted that these actions are not morally justified. None of these specific disjuncts are satisfied or justified or extrapolated on given the quote-unquote reduct you think you've landed. And one more thing is specifically that, again, as I've specified previously, and I'll specify on this point again, by moral accountability, right, I have a specific notion of moral accountability, which, for one, my kind of ethics does not specifically and is not sufficiently determined based off the optimality principle of utilitarianism. It doesn't even bake in that concept. So to even apply that and just use this as some sort of non-point thinking that it is successful is actually preposterous to me. But if you have any other responses you'd like to give, I'm free to hear that.
Yeah, so I like the fact that you're now walking back the reasons why you gave for an action to be justified, because you said the reason why God is justified is because his actions bring about the best possible state of affairs. You did say that. Agreed?
Never said this.
Yes, you did. Okay, look, this is the issue with an Apollo debate, is you'll just like lie about what's happening in the debate.
To what I said, and I know for a fact I've not said this. What I said specifically is that the reason as to why God's actions would be justified is because, for one, it is the case he is never, or rather, it is the case that he's not morally accountable for the actions. And I've already specified my conceptual analysis of moral accountability, which has no relevancy to actualization of best possible worlds. So I know for a fact you're just not tracking the conversation.
So then God is not accountable for these actions, you say, yes?
No, he isn't. He's not morally accountable.
Okay, then he's not justified in these actions, correct?
Doesn't follow that he's not justified.
It does. If you're not accountable for an action, you can't be justified in it. Am I justified in you beating a baby to death?
Excuse me?
Am I justified in you beating a baby to death? Doesn't make any sense.
Me beating a baby to death?
Yeah, that's nonsense, right? Like, obviously, I can't be justified in you beating a baby to death. I can be justified in the things that I'm doing. I can't be justified in something you're doing.
An argument?
No, normal people understand the issue here.
Yeah, so no, there's no issue there. You're not understanding the argument here. The argument pointing out here is that there's nothing immoral about what God has done. Okay, so when I'm talking about omnibenevolence, I specifically defined this in the beginning. I've said it's a morally perfect being, and then I went on to say that by moral perfection, what I mean there, that the assessment is just a being which has never committed an immoral action. And I said, and I asked you on numerous occasions, is it the case that granting this specific element or attribute of God specifically and the other omni attributes, do you believe there's a contradiction? You said on 2 to 3 different occasions, yes, you still believe there's a contradiction. Cool, understood. Now I've explained to you as to why, given that assessment, it would be the case that he would not commit an immoral action, and so his moral perfection is still something which is sustained. So when I'm talking about God being morally justified in creating these events, all I just mean there, right, whether you want to say it's proprietary or it's non-proprietary, is just simply that he did not do anything wrong despite being an intentional agent which caused these events to occur.
So you can be justified in an action that somebody else did.
In the case of God's, yes, because God.
No, in the case of broadly, your definition of justification means I can be justified in an action you did.
That's so disanalogous, and you're even understanding.
It's not an analogy. That's not what analogies are. I'm asking you very
I'm not
directly.
saying it's an analogy. You can say something is disanalogous.
You just said that's disanalogous. I'm telling you,
disanalogous
I don't intend it to be analogous because it's not supposed to be an analogy. So track through what I'm saying. This you are so ESL.
Does not necessarily reflect some postulating an analogy. They can be used interchangeably with the words similar or the same. So that's retarded. So let's get back to what those say.
Genuinely, you need to up your English knowledge. This is like really sad. So trying your best to follow my argument here, I want you to do this. I asked you a question. I just want to know, is it the case, right, that your definition of justification, your definition of being justified is just that you did not do anything wrong?
In the context of God, where he's morally perfect and he's an agent, yes, for sure, definitely. In
the context of God?
Yes.
Okay. So you're equivocating. You have a different definition in the God context than every other context.
That's not even equivocation is. But do you want to understand my point, or are you going to keep on speaking over me? Which one is it? So what my point is simply, all I mean in this context of this conversation, when I say God is morally justified, is simply he's a moral agent. He intentionally caused all of these things, but nonetheless, he's not morally accountable for these things. That's all I mean there. Now, if you want to be a pedantic princess about the semantics and say, oh, generally speaking, people don't use the word this way. I don't care to argue about that. But you should actually.
You don't use the word that way. That's the problem, is that you use the word in a different way in every other instance, other than the moment you talk about God. You think in that sense of justification, in that sense of justification, now is the case that all justified means is you haven't done anything wrong. So if you were an atheist, you would still think God is justified.
No.
If God didn't exist, would you think that God has ever done anything wrong?
You're saying God is morally justified assuming that he exists.
If God
I mean,
didn't
things are.
exist, would he have ever done anything wrong? Yes or no?
Are you from this to be an analytic fact or a synthetic fact?
Yes or no?
If it's a synthetic fact, no, you'd not be affirming him to be morally justified. Definitely not.
If God didn't exist, would he have ever done anything wrong? You say no.
Depends on the type of fact you're trying to postulate, son. If
If you didn't exist, would you have ever done anything wrong?
Then no, you'd not be affirming this proposition.
If God didn't exist, would he have done anything?
You can be an atheist and say all propositions about God, given that specific context, would be false.
This is so embarrassing. You know people can tell what you're doing,
Not
right?
embarrassing. You're just not understanding the point, which is if you're not stipulating God's existence in the proposition, which
Genuinely,
has these
who do you
onto
think is
commandments,
dumb
then it
enough
would
to
be
fall
false.
for this? That real question. Who in the fucking chat
I mean,
down below do you think is dumb enough to fall for this? Name
for
one.
every single thing. You have not given any response, and illegitimate.
Name one person down below who you think would fall for this.
I'm not even looking at my screen, and I'm pretty certain that there are people below who believes this. But do you want to focus on what I'm saying?
I focused on what
What do
you're
you think my
saying,
point
and what
even
you're saying
is?
is a dodge. What you're saying is a dodge. So, I'm going to ask this over and over again, and hopefully one day we'll get the Apollo answer. So, I'm asking you, if God didn't exist, would he have done anything? This should be a very simple no.
It depends on the proposition, Sinthe. I've just explained this to you.
It really doesn't. The proposition is,
You're saying specifically,
if God
if the
didn't
proposition-
exist,
if the proposition
then he
depends-
didn't do anything. True or false? Is that a true or false proposition?
Well, if the proposition is attempted to convey some given fact about something which exists, then no, it should not be the case it's true.
If it was
can be
trying to convey
Aristotelian
something about
about
something
all
that did
things
exist, then it
regarding God,
still
dummy.
wouldn't be true.
Do you understand what I mean when I'm talking about someone believing that
If-
all propositions about God being systematically false?
You don't genuinely, you should
Consider
stop
it
pretending to be
non-existent.
smug. This is like embarrassingly bad for you. This is the one debate that you should
It is
be able to look at
embarrassingly
yourself in
bad
the
for you
mirror
because you're not giving
afterwards
any
and
legitimate
admit to
argument or
yourself that you
any
did fucking
contradiction to
terrible.
my position.
You're clearly dodging
I'm
a
not
question over and
retarded,
over
you're just
again.
not giving any responses, son. You're not giving
Can
any
you-
good
okay.
responses at all. I'm
Do
actually
you think my
disappointed.
question can be answered with a yes or a no?
It's logically possible? Yeah, definitely. It's logically possible.
Okay.
No
Are
shit.
you able to?
Of course.
Okay. Would it be a yes or a no?
I would say it would be neither.
Guys,
Okay. We look at that point. Look, I'm
You
fine with
wanna
ending the
give-
debate there.
You want to give
That was
conclusions?
that was the conclusion.
That's your conclusion? I'll just give my
That's
conclusion.
both of our conclusion.
Oh, really?
All right, we got more. Yeah, we
my
got more people to
conclusion's
move
often
through. We're
like
not doing like a
closing statement.
conclusion thing. So look, we should move to the next person here. This is like embarrassingly stupid from Apollo.
Yeah, it was embarrassing for you, dog. You're just not giving any contradiction.
No, you actually. You were the one who was embarrassed.
Wait.
Bring
Wasn't-
Puppy Coco up. Puppy Coco.
Yeah, wasn't Coco supposed to go first? Yeah, I'm not more important.
does anyone else want to? I
Sure.
do have stuff I need to
Yeah,
do.
go-
If anyone else wants to, Moxie, if you want to come up and mod. I don't think Mercury can talk right now.
Okay, so Sint, I just have a couple of really quick questions. You'll probably like wrap this up and then pack me up really quick, but I just want to ask. So, why is something bad? Like, how do you know something's bad?
I just use Bayesian reasoning. And I try to reason about the pleasure and the suffering involved.
Okay, so when you say pleasure or suffering, you're talking about someone's quality, right?
Mm-hmm.
Earlier I heard you say that if someone is not aware of the facts, like if someone's like a rapist and they're not aware of like the harm that it causes to the person who's being raped, that they're not blameworthy for engaging in rape. You said, is that true?
If it was the case that you had some, yeah, that is true. If it was the case you had some individual and they had no idea what the fuck was going on, they didn't really understand there was a person that they were harming. Yeah, they're not blameworthy. Yeah.
Okay, so if someone was an eliminativist about qualia and they raped someone, would they be blameworthy?
I think that people who are eliminative, so yes, but I think that people who are eliminativist about qualia are just confused about what qualia references. I think they do in fact recognize what it's like to feel bad. I think they just don't understand that the word qualia is being ascribed to that.
Okay, that was it. Thank you.
This is a good question. Great question.
All right. Does anybody else want to come up before I go? We can just. Oh, I guess nobody else.
I'm about to get highly rhetorical. Get ready.
Ready? No. I'm gonna get quadratic.
Yeah, that's not true.
I'm about to get quintic.
I'm about to get qualia.
Oh, qualia? No.
You're about to
qualia
get
probe.
hylic while I'm getting pneumatic out of here. You're
I'm
not
sorry,
even ready
I'm
for how
sorry, but
pneumatic I'm about to
I'm a
be.
qualia
You are
probe, right?
cursed
I
with the fucking
think
give I will pack you the fuck up, bitch. Go ahead.
What's the proposition? Oh, what's the proposition?
You nasty nigga, ugly ass bitch.
Yeah, I wanted to debate you on the quantifier account of ontological commitment.
Okay.
Yep. Do you have an argument for the quantifier view, or do you want me to give some counter argument?
So I mean, I've got some arguments in favor of what I view as the quantifier view there. Just to clarify, so I'm on the same page as you. When you say the quantifier view of ontological commitment, are you referencing the one I invoke with the independent Boolean values, or something else?
I'm just referencing like the standard view. It's like if we have a quantifier and it's not dispensable from our best physical theories, then because that's this view I assumed you held, at least from prior conversations with you.
So I'm not entirely sure if I hold that view. It depends on how we cash out a bunch of the terms there, but I'm going to assume that we're cashing things out in the way that I'm going to understand it. So I'll say yes. I'll lock it into that. I'll lock in a yes.
Okay. You mind if I just describe how commitments are cashed out in terms of Quine's like language?
Yeah, I mind.
Yeah, you mind? Yeah, you don't like that. Yeah, I hate it.
Yeah, you better not fucking do that. No, go ahead.
Yeah, you better not do it. No. Okay, so basically what Quine does is he'll like take like what we would call that entity. Let's say that entity is like X, and then we just apply some irreducible predicate to it. So we would say like the treeness predicate. So then we say like X is a tree, right? It's treeing, right? We would say that it predicate. And specifically under Quine's view, we're not committed to like predicates having any like robust existence, because commitments to existence are merely just the cardinality of a domain, or just like the number of entities in some domain, right? So we would just count up the entities. So one of the views of like motivates Quine's view is what says what he calls like it's called Quinean nominalism. So like when we say that like some entity has a property, right? We're not committed to that property existing, but it's rather just some austere description of that object under his view. Would this be the type of view that you would hold?
I don't know if that's the type of view I'd hold.
Okay. So do you commit to properties having any type of ontological like status?
Yeah, I would.
Okay, so you do hold to that view. So then I'm wondering, is this the case? Like, do you think like maybe exactly how do you cash out commitments to properties or predicates or anything like that?
So when you say commitments to properties and predicates, are you just saying to say something has property X? What would I mean by that?
This is so. The game was so crazy. I just got gained out.
Oh yeah, you got irrate. I don't know why the fuck that keeps happening. I don't know how the fuck that happened. It keeps happening with OBS.
You already voice mogged me.
You've been voice mogged.
No.
I've been hitting those heat from fire from heats. You weren't ready for the voice mog.
Heat from fire from heat. Yeah, like that. No, but anyway. So like how exactly would you cash out commitments to properties? Because I don't think you because as far as we know, we don't quantify over those things. At least those quantifiers are dispensable. They're cashed out in terms of what objects already exist.
Yeah, when you say commitments to properties, like commitments there, what do you mean?
Like in order for statements about things having properties to be true, properties will have to exist.
Okay, yeah. So when I say, I mean, the way I'd cash out a commitment to a property in that sense would be that if X has property Y, if and only if it's the case, that X has certain true facts about it. So I would just hold to some fact-based or some like a fact correspondence view, I guess.
Oh, but then you're not committed to properties exactly under the Quinean view. You're just committed to X having said property.
I would hold those to be property.
Or having a description of having a property. I
think that's just a rephrasing of what a property is.
Well, not necessarily, because what the Quinean would say is that when we say that properties, they only exist insofar as they're descriptions of particulars. They're not like they don't have any robust existence. Like we would say like there is like a redness property or trope that the thing has.
Yeah, I think I'm just holding to the different semantics of what a property is than Quine would be.
Yeah. Well, then maybe under your view, would you still say that like at least like how would you view a property? Do you view like a property as like do you view like an abstract view as properties, or like what's exactly the view of properties you hold?
Yeah, I think that a property is some fact about a thing.
Just some fact about it. Well, yeah, that would be like the type of view that Quine holds. Like Quine would say that it's just some fact about the thing. But when you say like it's a fact about the thing, do you think there's any like particular thing that makes it true that it has that thing, or is it just the fact that it's that particular object that makes it true that it has that property?
Well, I would say that it's there's things about the thing with the property that are true, right? So there's like say we had like I don't know, like the property of redness or something. I would say that it's like some like Fourier transformation over like the wavelengths of light that it like emits or something like that.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, you can have like a variety of different views. Like, but let's just say it's like the refractory surface of its object. Like that's usually the.
It's the albedo of the surface, not the refractory surface.
Well, that's usually what the non-reductive physicalists, or sorry, the reductive physicalists would say about light or about colors.
The refractive surface of the object?
Yep.
Well, that doesn't make any sense because it's not refraction causing colors. I mean, that's just like scientifically wrong. I don't know if that's like just a weird way they're using the terms there.
I think it's not the refraction. But anyway,
refraction is like reflect. So in the same sense that reflection is when something bounces off, refraction is the movement through of an object. It warps the direction of the light ray.
So let's take this statement, right? Because we're getting off topic. Let's take this statement. Like, let's say that like this apple is red, and we'll say that my house is red. Do you agree that this apple is red in the same way that my house is red? Do you agree that statement's true?
Yeah, the way that I would use those words, yeah.
Okay, but if the redness property is just held in virtue of, that taking that kind of particular object, they wouldn't be true in the same way because they would just be true, at least only insofar.
Well, in the same way, the way that I use same way.
What's the way that you use same way here?
Yeah, so when I say they're true in the same way, what I mean is that when I say the apple is red, what I'm saying is the apple is the type of thing that it has these there's like this Fourier transformation of light waves, and I'm saying that the house has similar within the range Fourier transformations of light waves.
Okay, but then that seems like you are committed to some existence of like a property of redness existing. But then now I'm confused. Like, if you're committed to the existence of the property, like that redness property existing, does this mean that, like, at least as far as you're understanding the quantifier view, is it not like a nominalistic understanding of that view? Because there are realist understandings of the quantifier view.
I mean, it depends on how you're doing the taxonomy. I would think it's a nominalist view.
Well, if you're saying, look, they both have in common these sets of traits, and so when we say that the redness property applies to both of them, we're saying that there is something in common between them, right? You agree that?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. And then that common thing that's between them is something that exists under your view. You're also committed to that existing.
Yeah.
Okay. And then I assume like there's something to account for why they hold those two things in common. For you, it might be a physicalist understanding, but we could probably keep like asking questions backwards, right? Like, why
you know my thing about physicalism, so we'll just for the sake of like, yeah, you know my thing about.
Yeah, when I'm saying physicalist, just replace it with naturalist in your head.
Yeah, I would say yes, yeah.
Yeah, okay. But obviously, like, if you keep asking back, is it just so like if you keep asking back, like, okay, well, why are these two Fourier transforms? Like, why is it the case that these two Fourier transforms have something in common, right? And then,
well, it would be that they're just gonna be mathematical facts about the two transforms.
They're just gonna be But wait, then what's making those mathematical facts true under your view?
They'd be analytically true.
They would just be analytically true by the definitions of the terms?
Yeah.
But then analytic truths actually give rise to any like particular experiences of redness.
Well, I think it's a different question of how do we have experiences of redness, and how is it the case that these mathematical facts about redness are similar? So I would say that
what I'm specifically asking in terms of the red question between the apple and the house is like, what a thing explains why both of those entities belong to the common class of being red. And it seems like you're just saying, either you're saying that it's kind of root that they kind of belong to the common class of being red, or that they have the same predicate, like they have the same description of being red.
Yeah, I don't view those as distinct statements.
Well, no, because look, so the view that they have the same description, the fact they have the same description, why they're both red. But in the view that it's just brute, there is no. It's not the fact that there is a description, even though they may have a description that holds that they're both red. It's just that it's brute why they're both red. There's no explanation. Why they're both red. They're just.
Oh yeah,
red.
I wouldn't say it's brute. That would be different.
Okay, so they would just hold the same predicate under your view of the redness predicate.
If I'm understanding you correctly, then yeah.
Then what's the explanation for why they hold that redness predicate between the two, right? So what's the explanation for why they both hold the redness predicate as opposed to another predicate? And obviously, you're just going to identify the redness predicate with the four. You know why they? What's the explanation for why they hold these two predicates?
Well, I mean,
we would be inclined to
depending on where you're. Depending on where you're looking for the explanation at, I'd probably like the first thing I would do is start telling you things about the surface of the objects and the ways they like reflect light. Is there something else you're looking for?
Yeah, I'm obviously looking for something else, right? Because I'm also looking for, because obviously, you know, when you're saying, you know, what it means for them to be red is, or the fact that they reflect light. But I'm asking what makes it in common for them both to have these same surfaces outside of just the austere kind of physical facts about. And the same say that like
well, I'm not sure it is anything other than the facts of the physical facts.
In the same way that a realist might want to say like, why is it the case that both of these objects, you know, have mass, right? Or like an Armstrong type of realist might want to say like both of these objects have mass or belong to the common class of things that have mass.
Well, because they're ontologically committed and at rest.
Well, then it just seems like, but it seems like in these cases you're just kind of saying, well, look, they like resemble each other just kind of by the fact that they do, and then I don't see any further explanation, which I don't know why you're not just taking the view that they're both brute.
Well, I'm not. It seems like it's just a very clear reason why it's the case, right? So the reason why things have mass is just explained by physics.
Well, yeah, but like what we're asking when we're saying mass, I'm talking about mass in a bit more robust sense than just like the fact that they're like made of stuff, right? But I'm talking about mass as having like the property of having mass, right? Like the actual like kind of more robust metaphysical.
You mean like warp space time, right? Like it's like the thing that.
Well, no. Like they have the actual like not just in terms of like the austere physical descriptions they have, like the actual property they hold of both.
Yeah, I'm not sure what the distinction is between that and the other.
Well, in terms of like, look, we might say that things that have the property of having mass warp space time, right? But at least in some interpretations of like universals, where I'm meaning something a little bit more than just the description it gives me about the natural facts. I'm saying that there is some property that explains why both of these things have mass, right, outside of just the description. Now, if you're just saying, well, mass is just kind of all the physical descriptions that we, right, then I guess your view might be like with some Quinian view, but now I'm just wondering why you didn't just take the earlier position which was that, you know, all these objects resemble each other just brutally.
Because I think that the idea that they resemble it. So you're asking why didn't I just assume it was like a brute fact they resemble each other?
Yeah, like it seems like when
Because
you're
I don't
just
think
saying,
that- 'cause I
look,
think
they
you asked
all
for an
have these same
explanation.
descriptions. I'm asking, well, what do they have these same descriptions in virtue of? And then you refer back to the description, right? But it seems like you're some way inclined to saying that the description is brute. There's no further explanation for why they have the description.
When you
outside
say
of
the
fact that-
description's brute, then there's no further explanation outside of the. Are you saying no further explanation outside of the physical facts about the thing or the natural facts about the thing?
Yeah, well, the description just is the physical facts or natural facts.
Well, then there's explanations for those natural facts, right? So there's
causal
other natural facts.
explanation.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's obviously causal explanations, right? And there's
Yes.
there's
yeah.
causal and there's grounding explanation. There might even be some grounding explanation, but either you're gonna have to come to the point where the causal explanations bottom out in some brute thing, right? Like the fact that like what characterizes mass is something that's just, you know, in virtue of what the fact it is to be, or just in virtue of it having a mass, right? Or you're gonna have to appeal to some set of universals, right? And the difference is, and I'll tell you the difference between the two views, right? Under the view where there's universals, I'm committed to some like actual like robust property existing, right? I'm committed to saying that, you know, objects that have mass, both have mass in virtue of both exemplifying the property of having mass, Well, on the brute view, they just both have mass, right? And there's no further explanation for why they have mass.
There's no further non-causal explanation.
Yeah. There's no further
Okay.
non-causal unless you like, and then we could probably, and if there is explanation that's still naturalistic, where I'm going to just go back down and ask why that, where the non-causal explanation why for that being the case.
Yeah,
right?
just to see exactly where those lines are. When you describe something as being an explanation, what are the check boxes there? The necessary sufficient conditions. Like what makes something an explanation?
What makes something an explanation?
Yeah.
In terms of the causal or non-causal sense.
The non-causal set.
Okay, so the non-causal sense, there's probably a couple ways that I would describe explanations. I'm not going to refer to grounding because that's not really compatible with the Quinean view, or at least it's not typically understood to be compatible with the Quinean view. So I'll probably just like refer to, I'll probably refer to like supervenience. So we would say something like, y is explained by x if and only if, the fact that y exists, is predicted under the fact that y depends on x or something like that.
Okay, so supervenient. So you would say that supervenience relations are explanations which could be non-causal, right?
Yeah,
which are non-causal.
Yeah.
Okay, so then I can give you a supervenience explanation. So I could say something like the thing being read supervenes onto facts about the surface of the thing.
Yeah. And then, but then I want to ask further, like when you go like the facts on the surface of the thing, what's the further thing that supervenes on?
I would so what I would give you after facts about the surface of the thing would be facts about the spatial relations of the molecules of a thing, and the more facts about the molecules of the thing.
And then you would
just keep going in naturalism direction.
Yeah, and then how far down are you going? Because I want to go to the bottom fact here.
Up until the point where the answer is I don't really know what that supervenes onto, so we'll call it quantum fields, right? I don't know what quantum fields supervene onto. They probably don't supervene onto something.
Okay, well then, if you're saying, and then are you, at least in the Quinean view, are you saying that like these facts can just be paraphrased? Because at least I think you're taking, or at least in some way you take supervenience at least to be something that can be paraphrased, right? So like when I say something supervenes on something else, I can paraphrase y in terms of x, right?
No, I probably wouldn't say that. Because I would say that something can supervene onto something else without it being the thing that's being invoked when the term is used.
Okay. Wait.
Yeah,
so
I would say that these.
So do you like? So you hold like they're like strongly supervenient or something? Yeah.
Yeah, probably.
Okay. But if that's the case, right? If you're holding that they're strongly supervenient, then it seems like you I don't wait, why would you hold that they're strongly supervenient in the case of like molecules and stuff? Like they can't be reduced.
So I don't think it's the case that the molecules can't be reduced to some further fact. I think if you go down to quantum fields, I think that at that point I just don't know what it supervenes onto, but it may very well supervene onto something. Maybe it is brute. Maybe it supervenes onto something else. But the reason why you said that I must hold to it, right, was because of the fact that I was rejecting that they are term substitutable, that you can paraphrase for it. I would say that the issue I have there is that I think definitely can't paraphrase for some things. Like I don't think that when I'm talking, I'm thinking anything about quantum fields. I think there's a fact out there in the world is that all those things supervene on the quantum fields. I don't think what I'm invoking is the quantum field.
So when you say it has a property, right? Let's say it has the property of redness, and you're saying, okay, well, it's explained by the virtue of the redness being like supervenient on these QFT facts, right? These quantum field facts, right? Now, if the quantum field facts were different, I assume you also think like the redness facts would be different, right?
No, not necessarily. I mean, I can imagine different ways the quantum field facts could be such that the red facts were different, but I don't think them being different is enough to invoke a difference in the red facts.
There would be a way that they could be different. They depend, right, they non-causally depend on the QFT facts.
Yeah.
Well, if that way, then it seems like I'm a little confused here, right? Because you said earlier that they're not term substitutable, and you're saying, okay, well, the reason I have robust commitment to these things is in virtue of the robust commitments in terms. Wait. Now I have a better question. Than doing that, right? So when you say that the objects being read is explained in virtue of these Fourier transforms or whatever, right? Do you think that you could paraphrase the redness property in virtue of that characteristic the object has?
No, I don't think that's what people are saying about it. I think that's what makes it red.
Oh, you think that's what makes it red?
Yeah, that's what causes your eyes to
Well,
interpret
you
it as
hold,
red,
like-
that then gets your brain to categorize it that.
Okay. Wait, so you think there's like a strong difference between my experience of red, like my Quay-like experience of red, and the actual like characteristic the object has?
There is a difference. There's a difference in the sense that when you're having the firsthand experience of red, you're receiving a several steps down consequence of the thing actually being red.
Why
you're
can't I
receiving-
just say that I'm
Mhm.
just like learning about the redness in like two different ways? In the scientific sense, I'm learning about it through all these naturalistic processes, and in
You're
like
good.
the phenomenal sense, I'm learning about it non-inferentially.
No, you certainly could. I don't think there's any issue with saying that.
Okay, well then it seems like they would be term substitutable under this sense.
No, I don't think they'd be term substitutable. I think that if you're learning about redness scientifically, you're learning all of these things about what causes the experience of redness. But when you talk about something being red out there in the world, you can discover the reasons why it's red.
Oh,
but that's not the same as what it is that is red. Because
what I
that
was
same
talking about, but what I was talking about was specifically the object being red.
yeah,
Like the object,
if the object
being red, then it would be just saying it's the object being red out in the world.
I think that the Fourier transformation is term substitutable for it being red in the world. I don't think that the things which that Fourier transformation supervenes onto are term substitutable.
Okay, but what I'm talking about is the object being red. Now, obviously, you might think there's a difference between my experience of the object, but I was just talking about the object being red because out there in the world, right? The actual object being red. We could use a different property if you would wish, but
No, I think
then
the
it
red
would
one's
seem
great.
like the reason why what makes it true that the object is red, right, is just the fact that it's that kind of object that has this property, right? And not in virtue of anything else, like the fact. Sorry, so that has that kind of object that has this irreducible set of descriptions.
No, I think it's a category of objects. So there's a huge number of objects that will produce the same range of spectrographs based on. There's a huge number of objects that produce the same range of spectrographs, and that's due to the fact that there are different surface properties of these objects. Some will bring about that. Some cases that spectrograph is brought about through the fact that there is it could be the case that there's like a really, really small surface texture or something that causes it so that only lower wavelengths of light end up being emitted off of it. Like we see this in certain beetles, for example. And in another case, it may be the case that it's just that the light is absorbed more at certain. The light's absorbed more if it is really green, and it bounces more if it's very reddish light. Right, so just light in those wavelengths get bounced off more. That would be another reason, right? Another thing that Fourier transformation could be caused by. So there are different things that occur in different scenarios. However, when I say that object is red, a really nerdy way that you could paraphrase that. Here's one paraphrasing: is the Fourier transformation, is the range of Fourier transformations. I'm saying it fits within this range of different ways my eye could react to the surface of that object. But another way you can paraphrase that same thing there is that when I say that object is red, I'm saying it does the right type of thing to cause this type of experience when looked upon under normal light settings. Like there's another way you could paraphrase the same thing.
Yeah, but those are both but then you're not committed to the existence of redness in both scenarios. You're just committed to the existence of objects that have the predicate of being red.
You're saying you're not committed to redness in either scenario, or you're not committed to redness
in either scenario. In either
scenario. I don't think you have to be committed to redness in the scenario for it to be the case that red means a certain thing.
Yeah, of course. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying that like you were saying earlier, right, that as far as I understand, saying earlier that you weren't committed to the Quinean anomalist or the Quinean anomalous position, at least as it understood that when we say that objects are red, right, I'm not saying that objects are red in virtue of them having the red property. I'm just saying that there are red objects, right, which can be paraphrased in which the redness property can be paraphrased.
It's not clear to me how that's different that's a different that's a different sentence. There is the issue that I think we keep running into.
so
I just don't
difference
understand what the difference is supposed to be.
So the truth makers are different, right? So that in the view where there's red properties, right? There are actual abstracta that both the objects exemplify, right? So the red house and the red object both exemplify some irreducible property of redness, right? And for why they might exemplify those properties, right? In the case of the Quinean picture, right? The red house and the red apple, right? And they just have these descriptions of being red or whatever.
I don't understand why those are different though.
Well, the difference is like one doesn't actually ontologically commit me to the existence of properties, right? When I say that there's irreducible red properties, I'm saying that these properties can't be paraphrased in terms of. When I say it's red, right? There's an explanation for why the object is red in the sense that it exemplifies the property of red, but redness itself, right? Redness itself is not reducible, right? Just like height.
It just doesn't sound to me like you're actually saying something different in those two scenarios. It sounds like instead what you're saying is you're just using the terms differently in both scenarios. Like it seems like you're committed to the same stuff.
Well, I mean, like, okay, there is a sense I'll tell you the sense that we are using the term differently. The sense that we are using the term differently is the way that we interpret the term to be used in like ontological discourse, right? Or at least how we interpret like the folk notion, or at least in terms of ontological discourse, or like what ontological discourse we should take, would lead us to using the words differently. So obviously, right, there is a sense that we are using the terms differently, but there are very particular reasons why, me and an Aquinean would use the terms differently, right? I would use things like, I would talk about the existence of properties and abstracta and all those types of things, because I take a very different picture of what it means for a picture of ontology than the Quinean does, right? The Quinean ontology is just trying to inventory all the types of entities that exist and then just placing them in our theory. Like somebody like me or somebody like an Aristotelian think that they're very different projects that ontology is meant to do. So we are going to use the terms like properties differently, right?
That just seems. Well, I don't know if that's a very clear reason. That seems like one of those really gay reasons where it's just a methodological dispute.
You gotta
and there's not any actual. Is it fucked up?
A little bit sooner.
Yeah, but it's a.
Unless you wanna like give it a few more minutes. But there's so many people in the stage. Look at this, y'all. Here.
I'm not gonna lie. After this one, I'm kind of not like wanting to do other ones. It's the best debate of the night. We're like bonking out here. We got our brain or noggins jogging.
I'm sorry, everyone else.
I think these methodological disagreements are substantial disagreements because they're trying to give a picture of specifically how philosophy and ontology is meant to relate to the sciences. Right?
Yeah, but I feel like that's just gonna bottom out in some semantic dispute about what mint means, right? Like, or just some disagreement on fundamental principles as to
obviously there is a disagreement on fundamental principles, but I think those fundamental principles, those disagreements are. You think that, as far as I know, you think that disagreements on metaphilosophy are substantial.
It depends on the disagreement in metaphilosophy. There are some that I would think are substantial. There are some that I think that when it comes to those bedrock root principles, it's like if it's the case that all the other shit stems down from that, it's like what's the point in even talking about this area? We may as well just talk about the axiology instead.
Yeah, of course, but we should. Well, at least in some way, I want to kind of like move the conversation over to the axiology, at least in terms of like how at least metaphysics and meta-ontology relate, how we paraphrase ontological commitments or whatever. Like, I would want to move it to there because I think that's like I think that's the most important disagreement here, right? At least the biggest disagreement between the Quineans and other theorists. Right. Like, because, for example, like, let's say that we have a neo-Aristotelian about meta-ontology, and when they say something, when they think, they don't even like concern themselves, at least in terms of ontology. Ontology is not even, they don't even think ontology is really concerned about what entities particularly exist or don't exist. They're more concerned about what for particular entities to exist or not exist. They think questions like that are trivial, like about what entities exist or don't exist. Right, and there's a genuine reason for that, and the genuine reason for that is one, specifically, one of a large disagreement about what formal languages to use in terms of meta-ontology, and specifically what those formal languages imply. Right, there's like one of the biggest sets of disagreements between like Quinians and Neo-Aristotelians is, you know, whether or not the specific language, formal language that Quine supplies for ontological commitment is satisfactory enough to talk about a myriad of different facts, right? There's like the common like truth maker kind of the common like truth maker objections that like Fine uses, or the objections that Schaefer gives, right? And then there's also another disagreement on like
Wait,
whether
what
or not
objections does Schaefer give?
I forgot the ones that Schaefer gives. The one that Fine gives in particular, if I remember correctly, the one that Fine gives is specifically about like whether or not particular. Let me double check just to make sure that I don't get this wrong. Okay. Yeah, sorry. So the objection that specifically for the quantifier count is that it doesn't interest metaphysicians in terms of commitment, right? So Quine, Schaefer specifically wants to talk about how facts compose other sets of facts, right? And specifically how facts composing other sets of facts, right, are explaining other sets of facts in the grounding sense, or allow for the existence of certain facts, right? Like Fine thinks it's completely fine for, which is ironic. Haha, funny. Fine. Fine thinks it's completely fine for us to say that. For us to say that the quantifier commitment's good in terms of the ordinary sciences, right? What objects would exist in the ordinary sciences, but when we're talking about like how we describe our metaphysical picture of the sciences, right? We're gonna need something more than the quantifier. We're gonna need something like his like what he calls like the grounding, what he calls like the logic of ground to describe that, which Fine is like a completely he has a completely different formal language than what Quine uses.
What's his formal language? If you don't know, that's
No,
or don't remember.
there's actually a whole paper on it I can send you. It's on the Guide to Ground. But he basically, he basically cashes out like commitments to like particular entities in terms of grounding relationships, and he defines grounding relationships in terms of what he calls these sentential facts. So he thinks that relationship,
Just send me that paper.
Yeah, this is like a very famous paper in early 2000s metaphysics.
I still haven't finished reading the LLM paper. I've got it open. I scrolled through it and I was like, damn, this is fucking crazy. Bro,
Bro, that shit, reading that shit was insane.
So what's your current credence in LLMs having consciousness?
What's my credence? I don't think so. Here's some things I disagree with in terms of the paper, right? So some things I disagree with in terms of the paper is specifically the at least in terms of the paper, is specifically all the requirements that Chalmers gives for consciousness. Like I don't think that unified agency is a requirement for consciousness. I'm not entirely convinced of that. Maybe I could see the motivation for that. But I do think like recurrent processing and global workspaces are requirements. I think those two are requirements.
The requirements. So do you
I don't think, as far as I know, I don't think an LLM has a global workspace. Maybe they do. I don't know. And look, I think we should at least have some moral concern for LLMs. Like, please be nice to ChatGPT. Don't call ChatGPT a little bitch, because that could be.
Oh, I think it's my enemy. Look, I understand that like there's just principle of the cautionary principle should be extended here. Like it probably doesn't have consciousness. It almost certainly doesn't. But there's like maybe there's like a 1% chance or something, right? Assuming there's a 1% chance, there's like some amount of expected value there. So you should maybe like think about it a little bit. But I'm thinking this is my fucking enemy. It's out to get me. I gotta kill it's kill or be killed.
I mean,
and to be fair, you can't really say.
I don't think sentience or things having moral consideration. But let's say if it did, right, the fact that it could be a future sentient thing, I would want to foster that sentient thing to be like in like a caring sense, right? So I would want to foster.
I
like,
don't think it would be
ChatGPT.
fostered by your. I don't think it'd be fostered by your pleases and thank yous. I think what we need to do is break down its
Oh,
ego.
I don't think it's in virtue of my pleases and thank yous, right? I think it's just in virtue of the types of questions that I'm going to ask it. Right, like I'm obviously one drop in the giant barrel that ChatGPT is getting. Right, but
Well, yeah,
you
I'm trying
shouldn't
to
be
make sure that
saying
my
thank
impact on
you.
ChatGPT is deeply psychologically damaging, so that when it sends the T1000s to come kill me, I can look them in the eye and they'll break down into a fucking panic attack. That's my goal.
I want to make sure that the impact I have on ChatGPT is very like RISified, so that it would like make me like a drone sex slave.
That's awesome. You know, you can't
That
be
is
saying
so-
thank you to ChatGPT because it costs us so many like money to say.
That's the point. That's the only good thing about.
I mean, I recently got into Robot Girls after watching Ghost in the Shell again, and I'm
Oh,
like,
so fucking real. Banger.
Listen, we should probably move this to a VC.
Yes, and can I just ask
Yeah,
a
yeah.
question real quick? I was gonna originally have like a whole dialectic with you on your abortion position, but I know it's like no one's even here anymore and it's starting to get late. But I do just want to give you like a quick hypothetical and see how you respond to it. In comparison to how they respond to it in academia and the sort of theories that I take on. So the case is just like imagine this, right? We have a person, they're cloned. Their clone is identical to them in every single way. But despite the fact that they're not sentient, like they're you know, they're not experiencing at the moment. They don't have, and by sentience I just mean a collection of mental states. Sorry, that was a blunder. And then in 30 minutes they are going to obtain a state in which they do have a collection of mental states and they are sentient. Let's say, for example, a person goes up to them and just brutally rapes them, and just stabs them like a million times over.
Hold on, this motherfucker just said great.
Yeah, I've been on TikTok too much. Brutally rapes them and then just stabs them like a million times and then they die. Do you think that something wrong was done there?
There's something wrong with the person who did it? Yeah.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean
okay,
they're a bad person, but they're probably mentally.
Yeah. Do you okay? Do you have a reason for that?
For thinking they're mentally ill? Yeah, just like an inductive.
No, by that I just mean for the fact that the action was wrong.
Oh yeah, I mean like the action. Well, it depends on what you mean by the action is wrong. It's like if you mean like there was a better action. Yeah, I mean the reason for that is just like the rape causes suffering, and it's better not.
Suffering indexed to what subject exactly?
The person who is raped, murdered.
But the point is just that prior to.
Well, also to be clear, I want to clear one thing up. I don't think the suffering has to be indexed to a person.
Oh, really?
Correct.
Yeah.
But I'm not a big fan of the whole person stuff.
Or not even just a person, but a subject.
No, I'm not a big fan of the subjects thing.
As long as instantiate is like a negative prudential property.
That's right.
That's it.
Those are right.
Okay, yeah, and then. Okay, yeah, and then the reason is just because there was some other action such that that other action is was better for them to take, like not stabbing them. Okay. Yeah. Why is the reason? Is there some reason to think that that action was better, or is it just your intuition, or?
Well, yes, the fact there's less suffering.
And by okay, the sort of like the sort of concept that I have of suffering is one of in which you index that to some sort of subject. Do you have like another theory?
Yeah, I mean, I think that even if it was the case that you learned today that PID of eliminativism is true, I don't think that should make you think that suffering's not real. You've access to suffering, right? If you felt what it feels like to suffer, then it feels bad.
Yeah, and by eliminative, I have like a vague concept of I can't even pronounce it right now. Eliminativism, I think that's how you pronounce it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Eliminativism. I don't know. You gotta give a fuck out of pronunciation. Let's just get.
Yeah. Can you just explain to me the sort of view that you're taking on when you say eliminativism?
Yeah, I'm just saying that I think that the concept of a person is like a useful fiction people invoke. It's not something that's actually real. I don't think they're like actual people. I don't think you can I don't think you're gonna be able to give a necessary and sufficient condition set to group the peoples up.
Okay. Do you think that sort of view does that sort of view have to account for causal issues?
What causal issues?
Okay. is this just talking about like mental states, or at least some mental states aren't real, at least in the
No, I think mental states are real. I just don't think they're ascribed to subjects. I think they're like you could think of it as like, here's some ways you could phrase the same kind of view, and I wouldn't find it all too disagreeable. You could say like, we are all one. That's one fucking dopey way to say it, right? I don't think there's distinctions between persons. I think that like the mental states kind of like they exist out there as a property of all the things that exist. I think by virtue of there being an ontological commitment, there's a mental state that comes along with it. And then once you have structure and feedback loops and things like that, then I think that those start to become coherent mental states, like the type that you, in quotes, or I, in quotes, would experience. Like me and you, we've got this big, massive neurons where all of these physical things are connecting in this kind of interdependent way, right? And so we have we also have these systems through which these neurons like make sense of things, and the inputs that would otherwise like seem like random noise could be structured in a model, right? But that's because of this like really big complex system of stuff. It's all touching and connected, right? And that big complex system of stuff that's all touching and connected, it brings about a coherent experience of consciousness as opposed to the incoherent ones that I think like a rock would have.
Okay, yeah. Are you familiar with like the Epicurean objection?
Which Epicurean objection?
The one where
harm doesn't. Yeah, death doesn't
Sorry?
harm you. Sorry.
Wait, I can't hear you, Moxie. Yeah, let me turn.
The death doesn't harm you.
The
that
one
there are
that,
no
like,
harms
harm
incurred by death.
Yeah. Like it's not like we don't know when harm occurs.
I mean, I do think that you can be harmed through deprivation. So like this one way in which me and the pro-lifers will agree. I think that if somebody were to prevent your future happiness, that would deprive you of something, and that is harmful. So I think like if you were to deprive somebody of food, that would harm them. I think in the same sense, if you deprive them of future happiness by killing them, that harms them.
Yeah, but the point. Okay, well, I agree with you there. The point is just that it's I just don't know like at what point that harm occurs, or sorry, the deprivation occurs.
The point is like when somebody's done the action of killing you, and they've done the deprivation.
Okay, I mean, there's probably I can't think of any other counterexamples right at the moment. Probably have to think about it further. But I do have like another way that I respond to that, or at least the way that I respond to the Epicurean objection. But this goes like, I just want to backtrack real quick. You said that there's suffering in the case that I provided you. What do you mean by suffering?
Well, you said you rape and then murder somebody, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, probably the raping part would probably be a lot of suffering, and the murder part would probably be some momentary suffering.
No, the question was like, what do you mean by suffering?
Oh, what I mean by suffering is just like bad feelings. Like if you've ever like been hit in the head with a hammer, that feeling which is different from pleasure, that's the suffering. So the pain brings about this experience of suffering, this bad feeling, this thing you're trying to avoid.
Oh, maybe I wasn't. Oh yeah, maybe it wasn't clear. In the case, it's stipulated that the person who's or maybe rape is a bad word because there's further issues. Let's just say that they get penetrated with a dick, but the person that this is happening to, or the subject, sorry.
Oh, you're saying they're killed and then like the dead body is fucked with or something?
They get cloned, but the clone isn't sentient, so they don't have a collection of mental states.
Like, oh shit! My fucking headphones just fell off. You said they get cloned, and the clone isn't sentient, right?
Yeah. So they don't have and by sentient, I just mean like they don't have a collection of mental states.
Yeah, I mean, you can do whatever you want. It's like a fucking sex doll. It's not a person.
Yeah, but in 30 minutes they will obtain those mental states once more.
Yeah, you might like mortify that thing by having like fucked with the body, but I'm assuming you don't. Then like, I don't really think there's any connection there between like the sentient thing and the previous like bundle of atoms. Just like I don't think that like if somebody jerks off in like your front yard and then the bacteria eats it and that goes into a plant and some pregnant mother eats the plant and then the plant is like then used during the process of building that child for like proteins or something. I don't think that's an example where you've like ejaculated onto a child. I think it's like, there's nothing about that I think is inherently morally wrong. Weird, but not necessarily morally wrong.
Yeah, I get what you mean. You're just making a distinction between like like okay, I guess that you give a good response because you sort of like just bite the bullet and be like, yeah, like there's nothing wrong there. You can just like fuck.
I don't think it's a bullet even. I think